Faites appel, s'il vous plaît, Madame le greffier.
Monsieur le Senator Gorst. Monsieur le Senator Farnham.
Présent.
Madame le Senator Ferguson.
Présente.
Monsieur le Senator Lafondre.
Présent.
Madame le Senator Valois.
Présente.
Madame le Senator Moore.
Présente.
Monsieur le Senator Pallett.
Présent.
Monsieur le Senator Mezek.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Hélier.
Présent.
Madame le Connétable de Saint-Laurent.
Présente.
Madame le Connétable de Saint-Sauveur. Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Brelard.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Grouville.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de la Trinité.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Sainte-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Ouen.
Présent.
Madame le Connétable de Saint-Martin.
Présente.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Clément. Madame le Député Martin.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Southern. Madame le Député de Grouville.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Lewis.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Tadier.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Higgins. Monsieur le Député Masson.
Présent.
Madame le Député Pinel.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député de Saint-Martin.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député de Saint-Ouen.
Présent.
Madame le Député Dublé.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Labbe.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Wickenden.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député de Saint-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Truscott.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Young.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Ash.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Morel.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Guida.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député de la Trinité.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Madame le Député Le Higuera.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Ayen.
Présent.
Madame le Député Pershar. Monsieur le Député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le Député Alves.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Pamplin.
Présent.
Madame le Député Gardner.
Présente.
Monsieur le doyen.
Notre aide soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait les cieux et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi le gouvernement et la puissance de la terre, pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but la gloire de ton saint nom. Nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil de prudence, d'unir les cœurs et les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, et de la conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit que toute leur délibération est accompagnée de ta bénédiction. Réussisse au bien de soulagement du peuple, qu'il te plut de commettre à la soie. Car nous t'en prions au nom et par le mérite de ton Fils bien-aimé Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné de t'invoquer en disant: Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite dans la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonne nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous envoie point en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal. Car à toi est la règne, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen.
Monsieur le Sénateur Gorst.
Excusez.
Madame le Connétable de Saint-Sauveur.
Excusez.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Clément.
Present in the chat, so I'll mark as present.
Madame la députée Perchard,
Excusez,
Malade.
malade.
vous jurez que Madame la députée Perchard est tellement indisposée qu'elle ne peut pas assister aux États sans exposer sa santé.
Les États sont constitués. Very well. We now continue with the debate on P96. And does anyone further wish to speak on the proposition? Senator Ferguson, you've asked for a point of clarification. Was that? That would have been from the previous speaker, who was the Chief Minister who spoke yesterday evening. Is that right?
Either him or the Housing Minister, sir.
Well, I'm afraid it can only be a point of clarification of the speaker who has just spoken, because he has to give way, technically. So it might be.
Okay, well, maybe I can request the Chief Minister.
Well,
I have-
hold on a moment, Senator. Chief Minister, are you present? Chief Minister, are you present, and do you give way for a point of clarification?
Apologies, sir. Yes, sir.
And you give way for a point of clarification?
I think so, sir. I was slightly puzzled on the basis I'd finished my speech, but yes, okay.
Well, we normally leave these, if people agree, we leave points of clarification until the end, but technically you still have to give way. And if you don't give way, then there can't be a point of clarification. If you do, then there can.
I'll go for it. I'll give way, sir.
Very well. Senator Ferguson, yes, what's your point of
Well, that's
clarification?
kind of him. I've got the impression that, provided we don't alter the 15% affordable housing for South Hill, that SOJDC will be required to provide a significantly higher percentage for the waterfront and other states-owned sites. Can the Chief Minister confirm my understanding?
I'm not too sure if I can, sir. What I can say, there's two things. One is that in R139, sir, which is the report that was published in September, we categorically state that we will ensure, and I think this was specific to South Hill, but in essence, we can absolutely commit to doing this across all sites. That's what our intention was to ensure that a minimum of 15% of the units eventually constructed are provided for a first-time buyer shared equity scheme. So we can guarantee a minimum of 15%, and we will do our very best to achieve more than that. The problem we have, particularly on the waterfront, is that if it's even at 30%, it basically makes the scheme, and I use the word unviable, to the extent that it will, in essence, from our perspective, but the information I've got at this stage is that it would stop the scheme at 30%. And the danger there is that one then, firstly, is into redesigning the scheme. One is then into consultation, because that's what planning policy requires. So the time frame, I've been informed, would be at least an 18-month delay on what is meant to be a scheme for about 1,000 units.
Thank you very much, Chief
I
Minister.
hope
I'm
that
sorry.
assists,
Thank you very much, Chief Minister. Very well. Next to speak, the Connétable St Martin.
Do I think that this is that there is a housing crisis? Yes, I do, absolutely. Do I think that this is a good proposition? Yes, I do. Do I think that it is well timed? Unfortunately not. I've really struggled with this proposition, and in an ideal world I would like to vote for 30% of housing on these sites, even 50% to be affordable. My problem is that there is a housing crisis, and it's with us right now. The Housing Minister's promised that the plans are ready to go. If I vote for, the plans will go back to the drawing board. Millions, approximately 4 million, will be wasted, and vitally, homes will be delayed. As there is a crisis, I I do not want, and I don't think anybody really wants to delay. If I reluctantly vote against, I expect the plans to be submitted as soon as possible and building to commence as soon as is humanly possible. This is not a big ask or a ridiculous expectation, and I will be watching what happens with these plans. I'm sorry to the proposer that I cannot vote for this proposition. I respect Senator Mezek. He is a really good member of this Assembly. Thank you, sir.
Very much indeed, Connétable. Connétable St Clement. Connétable St Clement. If you're speaking, Connétable, we can't hear you. Connétable St Clement. Very well, I will pass you by, Connétable, return to you after the next speaker. Deputy Martin.
Thank you, sir. And I'm glad the debate went overnight because I was listening intently to what Deputy Higgins was saying. Deputy Higgins was saying he is all about representing the ordinary local working people of Jersey, and this must go through. He must support, he supported the 50%. If he had his way, it'd be 100%, etc, etc, etc. I actually don't know what the deputy thinks of these people who are actually living there. And I'm going to give you 3 stories. These are people that I've met. These are my people. This is my constituency. About 8 years ago, sir, this young couple, they stayed at home in their respective homes. They were married. They had a very small wedding and they saved and saved and saved to get their foot on the ladder, sir. They've now been there a few years and they have a young family. They still work with the help of the parents that they lived with. That's how they do it, sir. Then I met a single parent. The marriage had broke down, they had 1 child, and they were going to lose everything, but the partner didn't want anything to do with the home. So another really good, innovative decision was made. They moved the child into the bedroom with them and rent out the other room. And this has been working now brilliantly for 3 years. The lodger's like a friend, and it enables the single parent to do an extra job sometimes because the person is there and they trust them if they're doing unsociable hours. And then let me also talk about, these are real people, pensioners who had a home in one of the country parishes, but they couldn't manage it anymore, or they lost the partner who was the driver and they sold their house. They didn't make loads of money, just enough to buy a 1 or 2 bedroom on the waterfront because it's lift accessible, it's all on 1 floor. These are real people that are trying hard and tried hard. They're not leaving Jersey and they want to be here. And Senator Mezek is pitching same people who want to work hard and get their foot on the ladder, sir. The same type of people. It doesn't help anybody. The people who, if the scheme was up today, were giving up their 2 or 3 bedroom home in the country parish. Did you listen to the housing minister? They would have to sell to a family to get into the 20% of the right sizing. And then there's the 35%, which is bought off plan. This will just keep on giving. These couples or single persons only need to find £2,000 and they can buy over the next years while the development is being built, and then they get their keys and they have a home. And in that time, and this happened to a good few friends of my family, well, my daughter's friends, in Westmount, first generation to be able to buy, absolutely proud, and they did this on this scheme. So that's that scheme. And then there's 15% shared equity. So you can't afford a deposit for the whole lot. You buy half now, and you've got the option over the next 25 years to buy a bit more, as your wages go up, as your circumstances get better. Maybe the children don't need childcare, so you're saving money there. All fantastic, innovative schemes for real people. These 1,000 people that already live there are the people that SOJDC have been consulting with for the last 2 years. They have done their best to try and make sure homes will not be looked in, homes will not lose light, sir. They've moved mountains to help this go through planning as smoothly as it can. The plans that are ready to go, they are ready to go. And the public realm that is promised down there. If we shove in another 100 homes, what do we actually lose? The public realms for the whole of the island, sir. Everybody can enjoy the waterfront when it's finished. These people have been living on a building site right from the beginning, from first whence they built Victoria Place and Albert Place. 40 first-time buyers and 40 went to Homes Trust. Now, then they built Millay House, sorry, Anglicare Plan, Harbour Reach. And we actually had a meeting. We've had a few meetings down there, but we had a meeting about 6-7 weeks ago, sir. And they were your usual residents meeting. They weren't moaning that they've been living on a building site. They did bring up the opening times of the site on a Saturday, and the member from SOJDC who was there listening said he would check that out because they shouldn't be there before a certain time and they should be gone by a certain time. And one gentleman in the audience asked if on the 11th of the 11th that they could shut the building site down for 10 minutes so they could have the proper 1 minute silence. SOJD said that will be sorted. Nobody questioned that because they have such a fantastic working relationship with SOJDC. Now, I heard my constable speak yesterday. He seemed quite sad because he said town will take. He doesn't want ribbon development in the country parishes. We will do our bit. We'll do as much as we can, but we want proper town planning and we don't want town cramming.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Senator Ferguson, could you turn off your microphone, please? It's interrupting Deputy Martin's speech.
Yeah,
Deputy Martin, please do carry on.
Thank you. He wants proper town planning, not cramming. And this public realm that's been promised down there can be delivered. The plans are ready to go in. As I say, ordinary people. I've told you 3 stories of ordinary people, how they got there. They actually own probably a couple of bricks in their apartment at the moment. They'll be paying for the rest of it over the next 20 odd years, but they've got their foot on the ladder. I want everyone else to have a chance to get their foot on the ladder as soon as possible. And this scheme is ready to go with all those innovative things that SOJDC and our Housing Minister have worked on together to do. It really, really shouldn't be sent back. We've actually got another meeting with the residents on Tuesday. I don't think a lot of them even know that this is even being mooted or going on. But if you really want to vote for this today, you don't think they're real people, come down on Tuesday at 6 o'clock down the waterfront, meet them and tell them why you couldn't support the plans that they've been speaking about, that they've been promised. All the infrastructure, they know, they've lived down there, they want this a bit better. They have been listened to, but suddenly these are not the people that Deputy Higgins thinks he wants to represent, because they're not hard-working local Jersey people. Oh, yes, they are, sir. I meet them, I talk to them. They're my bread and butter people. When I knock doors, they let me in for a cup of tea. And they tell me their life stories, and I've just passed on 3 of them. But they're not just ordinary 3 stories. These are typical of lots of people. And don't stop the next lot of people getting on the ladder with the innovative schemes. 35% off plan, and they only have to find £2,000, and they get a few years to pay that deposit as their wages go up, etc., etc. Please don't think these are not people that matter. They do matter. They are working hard, and they really need to have their consultation listened to. It has been listened to. SAJDC have tried to do everything they want, and today, on a whim, I don't know why, as the Constable of St Mary said yesterday, he didn't really understand what affordable housing was, but he voted for the 50%. Deputy Young, he wants the round down there. He doesn't want it a concrete jungle, and he voted for 50%. We're too far down the line on this to go back to the drawing board. Don't let these people down. They really, really are real people. They are living on a building site. They didn't moan about that. They didn't moan about the Horizon building, just asking if sometimes on a Saturday they could not start so early and maybe finished a bit earlier. But they know, they said, we've got a home and we understand we need more homes, and what a beautiful place to live. They're not rich. Yes, there's a couple of penthouses, but go down them corridors. They're ordinary corridors with ordinary front doors, with ordinary Jersey working people behind them. Don't let them down today. Please don't move this for Jan tomorrow. It really, really just won't work. Even if you don't believe the money argument, believe the human argument of these people. They deserve better. After all the buildings done, they deserve the fantastic public realm that's been promised, and then all of the islanders can use. I'll leave it there, sir. I'm so upset for these people, and I'm upset that they may lose out for something that may never be delivered. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Deputy. I think the Constable St Clement is still having technical difficulties, so I will try and come back to him later. Senator Gorst.
Thank you, sir. This is, I think, a difficult decision now. For me, the 50% was straightforward. The 30% in comparison to a minimum of 15% is for me slightly more challenging. I want to start, however, sir, by just correcting something for the record. There was a speaker yesterday stood up and gave me a good bashing. I enjoy that, so I don't mind that at all. But when they're not quite accurate, then I feel I need, not for my part, but for others' part, just to correct the record. The assertion was that in governments which I'd either led or been a part of, they'd done nothing for housing. Of course, that's completely incorrect, sir. Hopefully that word's allowed. Under those governments, Andium was created, and every speaker today and in previous housing debates have praised Andium and the freedom that they now have because of the structuring, because of the bond to invest in housing. Hundreds of homes have been built. Hundreds of homes have been refurbished. They have a fantastic home buyer scheme. They basically could build on more sites than are available. If that hasn't transformed housing in Jersey, then I'm not sure what has. We're talking today about an SAJDC project. The finance centre on the Esplanade, sir, was controversial in its day, but how pleased we are that we went ahead with it, because it's taken offices from elsewhere in town, put those businesses in the International Finance Centre, and those other offices have been converted by the market into residential accommodation, all things that happened under those previous governments. We also brought forward, sir, a rezoning proposition. I'm not sure whether the Speaker supported those rezoning sites. I suspect not, sir. One of them was controversial, Sam Ray Nurseries. But right now, sir, there are homes and people living in homes because of those decisions of previous governments that I was involved with. Not to mention, sir, the deposit scheme, which granted families money to get onto the housing ladder. So in having set the record straight, perhaps the question is, so was that enough? And I think as we look back, we can acknowledge and accept that it wasn't enough. It seems to me that all action on housing generally in the fullness of time is never quite enough, and we've seen that situation get so much worse over the course of the last 3 years. So for me, sir, the question is, and I know my ministerial colleagues have been reminding me that it's no less than 15%. But is 15% enough? I don't believe it is, sir. I don't believe it is. I really do think that we could get at least 20%, probably 25%, and we could redo some of those numbers to get 25%. And the challenge for me today is, do I support the mover of the proposition who's saying 30%? Does that give us an opportunity to deliver 25? Or do I support my colleagues' minimum of 15%? And I wonder if there are other ministers to speak who could give the Assembly greater confidence that we are going to reach 25% and keep the application on the road and keep delivering the vast majority of the public realm improvements, because that is important. For me, 15% just is simply not enough. As in the words of the mover of the proposition, it certainly is not ambitious enough to deal with the issue whereby we need to create more availability of housing in that first rung of the ladder. Of course, we need all the other tenures and all the other areas of the market to have increased supply as well. The other complicating factor for me, sir, in considering which way I vote this morning, let's hope it's this morning, is the proposal that's before us. And I think we do have some very difficult decisions ahead of us as an island around how high we build in St Helier. And if we really did vote for the mover of the proposition and the 30% was unobtainable and did require some stalling of the scheme or going back to the drawing board, I might be a single lone voice in saying this, sir, but that might give us an opportunity to go higher, because once we've done this development, it seems to me that it might be challenging to go higher elsewhere in town. That might not be the case. We might still be able to do it. We know that we've got what is now an industrial site down at La Collette, which in due course will, of course, have the potential to be a fantastic new residential area of St Helier, which could be a really appealing place to live, and we would need to use height appropriately there. But we have an opportunity in the basin St Helier with a sufficient public realm to go higher than we've gone in the past. That can keep us economically strong. It can help us to keep the population growth in balance, and it can keep the green countryside and keep agriculture working. We can have the best, as it were, of all worlds. We know right now, sir, there are several thousand vacancies in the employment market. That's putting challenges on our economy. Of course, it also doesn't seem to be having any slowing effect on the increase in housing prices. So we have to deal with this housing crisis. So I'm not sure I've come to a conclusion in these comments. I wait to hear what others have got to say, particularly my colleagues, and what they might say during the course of this debate, and I'll listen with interest to the summing up of the mover as well, sir. Thank you.
Very much. Senator Connaught Iveson Clement, are you with us? We'll try again later. Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. It's been a very strange few days. The debate we had was very cooperative, and there are alliances across the Assembly, dare I use that word, where people voted on assisted dying. And I find myself sitting here encouraging Senator Gorse to continue along the way he started in his speech, and it's a rather strange one, but I'm a little bit nonplussed by the fact, if I'm honest, sir, but it's pleased to see. And there's a reality in this debate that needs to be looked at, and that is the reality of the genuine situation for people's accommodation on this island. What's happened at the moment is that a strange mixture of forces has been put together to create discontent and fear, I think, for those who may vote for this proposition, to say that one, either the whole scheme will be unviable, that nuclear option, which we've seen so many times from this government, with the hospital, with the Cyril and Markham House, with just about everything that's come forward. If we don't vote for it, then the whole scheme will fall in, this sort of form of chicken licking politics where the sky will fall in, which is a real shame, because I thought we had some intelligent debates in this assembly. And then we've had this strange combination of saying that there are schemes available that make these homes accessible. Also, you know, this morning as I was coming in on the bus this morning, and I thought, well, let's look up buying somewhere a 2-bedroom place. So I was thinking of a friend of mine who I met last night, and my daughter actually, who, you know, I think, you know, where's she going to live? Not that I don't want her living at home. I love her dearly, but you know, she's moved away once, and she might want to move away again. So let's actually look at the reality of prices. And I do this because I asked the housing minister yesterday, can he give us an idea of the price of these homes on the waterfront side? And he could not answer that. So he's now making an assumption about their affordability or their availability or their accessibility for these working people that Deputy Martin is talking about without knowing the price of them. So let's have a little look. There's a 2-bedroom apartment for sale. I think it's it looks like one of the waterfront ones, don't know, not much of a view. £565,000, over £500,000. There's another one, 2-bedroom for sale. Well, that's got parking, it's in town, there's no view. £595,000. Flying free, a 2-bedroom apartment to purchase off plan now, £540,000. This is £500,000, over £500,000. Let's go in. If you want to go into the 3-bedroom ones, well, you're talking £789,000, £865,000. Whatever scheme the government produces of shared equity for these so-called working families that Deputy Martin's talking about, it is not accessible. And the reality is that this foot on the ladder, this mythical foot on the ladder, is not going to happen for them. And it takes government to act to provide affordable homes, to say with the developer, which is a state-owned company on state-owned land that we own. And when you put it together in your head like that, it is mind-boggling that we're in this situation to actually make the change and say we are actually going to have a principle of, and we're asking for a minimum of 30%. That's all. And there are some clues as to direction of travel in terms of home building and state-owned and the State of Jersey Development Corporation from the amendment that didn't quite make it into the Assembly, which suggested a minimum, which very quickly becomes a maximum, of 15% of affordable on all builds. What we are getting here is a principle of property development, widespread, that is there as a cash cow for the State of Jersey Development Corporation, and we don't know where that money's going. So we're told that this is potentially destructive. Looking at the figures of 30%, there is a difference of £5 million of profit, and let's look at that figure. Let's actually analyse, and I ask people, please look at that figure, because these are on benchmarks that were already set and they were not flexed in any shape or form. So what we're doing here is it is the analogy is building the house. The foundations that are being given these benchmarks are within set boundaries, and then we're building upon them. But when you're doing that, if you were to change those benchmarks or to look again at those benchmarks, the figures would be different. Now, given that we don't even know how much these homes are going to go for, there is no clue. But if you look at the housing market at the moment, it's so inflated that you can only suggest that waterfront homes looking over the sea are going 2-bedroom flat for sale. Looking over the sea, £875,000. That's the reality of not building affordable homes. That's the reality of this situation. And as for this reality of people who have worked and worked and worked and lived with their parents, yes, we know so many of those people. I have friends, I have my own family, who are going to struggle to do anything, and they're working incredibly hard. They're well qualified. They're one of the pulling their socks up people that Deputy Martin would suggest. That others who can't afford a home, perhaps he's suggesting they're not, which is quite sad. And so we need in this Assembly to be taking control of the situation. And there was a very telling point yesterday from Deputy Russell Labby, the Housing Minister, where he said repeatedly, the State of Jersey Development Corporation tells me, well, sir, as Housing Minister, perhaps you should be telling them a little more and setting the boundaries and setting the criteria and leading the way, rather than coming up with what was a rather convoluted and disjointed description of these projects that are cloud cuckoo land sometimes as to what is actually accessible. And so let me set something that I'm really concerned about out to this Assembly, which is important, I think, is that what will happen is if we just leave the 15% affordable, that means 85% this Assembly is accepting is not affordable to the majority, but we'll put in some projects and hopefully they'll work, and they won't from the majority of people. And so they'll be left to be sold. And if they're not sold to on-island residents or people through those projects, they've got to be sold to make the money, because that's the principle that we've got here in building this. They have to go out to the market. And so in a couple of years' time, when they're sold to people who are very wealthy and can buy them and then let them for high rents, and if they don't sell them to those, well, perhaps overseas investors might be necessary. And that's the slippery slope that we enter when we build these developments with so few affordable homes. Because we are building on state-owned land with states entity, and I've got to keep a straight face when I say that. We are building homes that are inaccessible to the majority of our population, and we're sitting here and we're voting for it. Well, so I cannot do that. I believe it's fundamentally wrong. And when you look at the figures, those figures, I believe, are misleading in some ways, because the criteria in which they're set comes with what I believe, and I think there is evidence for this from the amendment that came earlier, of the principle of government. And what we are starting with, the only leadership we're getting from government in this is, we will only build not 15% as a token gesture towards affordable. We don't have to define affordable. And then we can go out to the public and say, look, there's all of these homes available that we're building, thousands of them. And if you pull yourself up by the bootstraps, you can go and buy one. And if you don't, then it's your own fault because you're either feckless or lazy. And that's the principle that we're seeing here. That's the reality of the politic of this. And as an aside, it's very interesting that the council, the chief minister can throw parties into this when it fancies him, but at other times, well, we don't talk about parties. Because this goes beyond party politics. This goes to the heart of what the problem is on this island for housing for so many people. It is unaffordable, sir, and we have a housing crisis. We are going to deal with that crisis by supporting 85% unaffordable homes. That's what people listening or looking at this debate are hearing. That's what they will see. Well done, States Chamber. Again, you have voted for something that is going to fail the island. And so that's what we need to look at and think about when we do this. And we cannot be held to ransom by these questionable figures, by this principle that the only way we can build this is by doing this and making money in this way. And I will say to the Constable of St Helier, when he talks about vote for this because it's ready to go and the urgency of it, it's quite interesting that he's been Constable of St Helier for a long, long time, and we're still talking about the St Helier realm and how we're going to build that. We still haven't got the walk pathways and the other. We haven't got a youth facility. Because the site that is available for that youth facility, there are obstacles that won't be dealt with. That's a really interesting approach from the Constable of St Helier. And I'm disappointed in my constable for not supporting this. Because there's another principle. Why is it that if we build more affordable homes, we are stopping people getting an affordable home? I just don't get it. Only by stopping the affordable homes can we build these homes that are not affordable and let people pull themselves up by their bootstraps and in some way through some convoluted scheme, which means they're never really going to own their own home. They're going to own a percentage of it. We can put some, they can work their socks off and I don't know. It does not make sense. There is one way to address this issue of affordable homes, one of many ways. That is to build affordable homes. This is an opportunity to do it. It does not stop the project. It will not stop the project. You've got a choice. You either make slightly less profit. Well, the realm of St Helier, the IFC buildings are coming forward. There's so much other stuff there. And to be honest, nothing's happened anyway, or very little. Or you go back and you make some changes. And I got to agree with Senator Gorse that it's perhaps an opportunity to make that number larger. But the cynicism, the built-in cynicism of a minimum of 15% is just astounding, because the reality is that what we've got is a political drive to just throw unaffordable homes onto the market because they do not believe that the people of this island, in fact, no, I'm not going to say that. I don't think it's parliamentary, sir. But I make a plea to people. Before you vote against this, think very carefully about what you're voting for. The notion that this project was about nuclear option, we've seen it so many times from this government. It's the only approach they've got. Because actually, when you've got poor foundations, forgive the pun, then you have to come up with an argument that is destructive. What we want to hear at the moment on housing is something constructive. Yes, 30% affordable homes. We'll try and make it more. Let's look at this project. There's no reason we have to stop it. There is urgency. The housing minister should be leading this. Yes, I will not let it stop. And as for Deputy Ash, the Assistant Treasury Minister, who says he has to agree it, and there's another gun to the Assembly's head, I will not agree it if it's not the right type of thing to do. Well, there you go. I won't mention in fact, no, I won't mention that. I'm not going to bring party politics into this today because it's too important for our people. It's too important for young people. Selfishly, it's too important for my family and my children, if they do want to stay here, haven't got a chance of buying anywhere, even though they're qualified and intelligent and beautiful human beings. They don't have the opportunity to get anywhere here. Now, that's fundamentally wrong. And this is one step towards us being able to do more and drive more affordable homes. And I think that this Assembly not taking this opportunity today is a huge error. So please, if you've been got at overnight with arguments that are flawed, please look at it again. Please think through what you're voting for today and look at the consequences of this long term. We will see these homes go to those who can afford them. And to do that, you have to be able to invest, or companies or whatever, and it becomes very convoluted. But they will not go to the families and people that really need them, that we need to support in our society. So these developments, of course, they need to happen. I do not believe that voting for this will stop them happening. That is fundamentally not the case. But we have an opportunity for this development to stop the drive towards building more and more unaffordable homes and flooding this so-called and this fixed market where homes that people cannot afford, which will end up with investors inevitably, and we just make the problem worse week on week and month and year on year. So let's take this opportunity today. Let's vote for this. It's 30%. It's going to make very little difference financially. It will not stop the project, but you have an opportunity to say to people of Jersey that we're going to do something, and we're going to start this now. Any other projects that come through that support housing, I will always and we will always support. So I urge members to vote for this amendment. I think very, very carefully about the outcomes if you do not. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Connaught Arbuthnot Clement, I'm not going to call on you again. If you have solved your technical difficulties and would like to speak, please indicate a desire to speak in the chat, and I'll call you in your turn as that arises. Next to speak is the Connaught Arbuthnot Brillard.
Thank you, sir. I questioned in my speech on the amendment the issue of loss in value at the South Hill site being agreeing to the proposed amendment before us now. Senator Mezak, sir, agreed that if I understand correctly, that this was the case from a monetary point of view, but suggested we need to consider the value of supplying affordable housing to those in desperate need. This is, in my mind, the crux of the matter. Do we sacrifice this development by losing twice the monetary value? The Chief Minister suggested, I think, we could get 3 affordable properties and monetary value for each apartment as proposed. And some, of course, site costs in addition are, of course, a consideration. But the government does have sites. It has the capability to assemble land parcels and provide the necessary affordable schemes we desperately need. My perception is that the present housing minister is being proactive in this, and I support his ambitions. Costs of housing, whether to purchase or rent, have always been difficult, and there will be many in this assembly who've been through the struggles of getting a roof over our heads. There is no doubt in my mind that the lack of a migration policy and lack of supply are the crucial areas we must address now. I do think it would be wrong to stall the South Hill development. It's ready to go, and we all know how long it takes to get to this stage. I have difficulty supporting the 30% proposals on this site and risk putting things off, but I am keen that the percentage of affordable homes in all other sites receives serious consideration in short time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I should perhaps explain that I appear to have done a thumbs up sign on the chat unintentionally of a comment from Deputy Young. Obviously, I was not expressing any view at all. I had thought he was asking. To
perhaps one day, sir. Perhaps.
I thought he was asking to speak, and I just wish to correct the record. Obviously, I expressed no views at all on the outcome of any debate or on its force of any particular speech. So, with apologies for that, does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy Wickenden.
Thank you, sir. I think we need to go back to the beginning of the proposer's speech on this. and I'm going to talk about the multiverse that he brought up. I can't believe some of the speeches I'm hearing. I feel they are from a different realm, sir. We have everyone agreeing that there is a problem with the supply of housing in this island, and we have a site that's ready to go. It's been through consultation. It gives good public realm, and that's what we need to be doing as soon as possible. To vote for this proposition as set out will then mean that we have to go back to consultation, delay. We have to redesign and go through another, get ready and build something for planning in a different way. Delay. It means that the financials, whether Deputy Ward says they're dubious or not, it's always, I don't think, sir. You put the evidence in front of somebody. If they don't like it, they'll tell you they don't think it's right. I'm hearing it a lot recently, sir. I'll be interested to see which way this vote goes and how the headlines will be. If this proposition goes through, will it be more affordable housing for St Helier, or is it the States Assembly have kicked the can down the road and they are not delivering the housing required for this island? Because that's what this proposition does. It kicks the can down the road, it delays and it stops delivering in the housing that everyone seems to agree is absolutely necessary. We're talking of a minimum of 15%. That's the lowest common denominator in what will be provided on this site. But what we can say is that any changes have to go to consultation. Delay, sir, kicking the can down the roads. I just don't understand how everyone stands up and says we need housing now and then we're going to stop it. Senator Moore yesterday talked about political direction. That's gone really well for us in the past, hasn't it? Political direction, getting involved. We're going to give you a new steer. Where are we with a hospital because of political direction? When I first came to the Assembly, it was a dual site, and then it was a single site at Gloucester Street, and now it's a single site up at Overdale through political direction. We have a site that's ready to go. It's being consulted on. My constituents are waiting for it. I have a friend who's waiting to buy on the ladder. He's looking at this site to buy so his family have somewhere to live. Let's kick that down the road further. Sir, we cannot delay any longer. We cannot turn around and say we desperately need housing and where's it going to be built, and then as soon as the site comes up we say, well, not quite this one, maybe not yet, can we change it a little bit, and then we'll wait till the next Assembly and we change it a bit more, and we end up with another Millennium Park, another hospital debate. Political direction sometimes is the bane getting things done, not the helpful decisions that need to be done, sir. Sir, if we vote for this, the headlines in the JEP and Balwick Express should be, oh look, they've done it again, indecision, kicking the can down the road, changing their minds. It shouldn't be anything other than that, sir. Please do not be fooled by these arguments that I don't believe the company that was doing the finances on this were doing it in the best possible way to actually give us the right information. The figures are the figures. This will cause delay. This will mean that there's not more money to put other sites with more housing somewhere else. It reduces our ability and the effectiveness to deliver housing in this island. Please do not be fooled by this idea that nothing will be delayed and this will not cause an effect to the hard-working people that are waiting to buy. These sites, when they're built with housing, aren't going to lay empty for 10 years because nobody can afford to buy them. There are people that are waiting to buy houses right now, and we should think about them too, sir. Do not kick the can down the road. Please do not vote for this proposition, sir.
Thank you very much indeed, Deputy. Conor Trinity.
Thank you, sir. I don't know if it's relevant that this debate has strayed into what is commonly known as Black Friday, but it appears to me that we are effectively being asked to support having a fire sale of one of our prime development sites. I'm afraid I cannot agree with this proposition. It is beholden on us to achieve the maximum public benefit from any state-owned asset, and we should be sweating South Hill and the waterfront to achieve the maximum return as any right-minded undertaking would do. Profits realised from the development of these sites will then in turn be invested in the delivery of homes for assisted purchase in which the states can retain an interest and delivery of improvements in public realm. This option will deliver far greater public benefit and result in additional homes within this category than the quick fix offered by P96 today. The best way for us to address the present housing shortage to maximum effect is by supporting the considered and structured approach being proposed by the Minister for Housing. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Connaughton. Deputy Masson.
Thank you, sir. It's been a very interesting debate and absolutely a relevant point brought up by Senator Mezek. But through all of this, I really do feel that the Constable of St Martin's has hit the nail on the head on this one. And she gave a very good, concise speech. And this is the problem. This is about the development, and I'm particularly talking the one down the waterfront. The development has been factored and put together on the basis of not only delivering units of accommodation, but other public realm improvements. And we heard the Constable of St Helier speak yesterday about how desperate he is to ensure that that public realm improvement is delivered. And I was very disappointed to hear from the Environment Minister yesterday, because I know in his heart of hearts, he strongly believes that developments can produce a wealth of public realm improvements through the planning application process. And I don't think for a moment that he would want to jeopardise that, because I don't think, from my experience of his speeches, that's where his politics lie. So I was surprised by the speech given by the Minister for the Environment because of that. So I think it's so important to say that, you know, for those people down in that area, they don't need more uncertainty for this development. Deputy Martin spoke about the constructions issues that they've been having to live with, and of course, you know, whether it's now or later, there will be a construction delay and the process to go through. But let's have this sooner rather than later. We know that the planning application is ready to go in early December. It's ready to go in. It's just pending this particular vote. And so what I can say is I have a message from the Housing Minister just to remind members that it's a minimum of 15% and that discussions are ongoing to see if that can be increased. And that is something that the Housing Minister is actively having. We don't know, because of the figures that have been used in order to finance this particular site and in order to get the independent financing from the banking sector in order to secure this development, whether 30% is something we can deliver on these sites which Senator Mezek is being asked for. But what I can tell members is that the Housing Minister is actively trying to up that percentage of what is delivered. But I do need to talk about semantics here, because it's been bandied around quite a bit. And I think it's unfortunate that what has been used which is a technical term of affordable housing, which when that is used in government terms is to mean social rental or first time buyer or variants of that. And I've never liked that term, and particularly for the semantic issue we've got into now, because then you can say, oh, well, if it's not affordable housing, oh, it must be unaffordable housing. No, what it means is the rest of it is at market rate. which, you know, we live in a capitalist society, that's how it works. And I would agree with members. My bone of contention here has always been we need a proper immigration policy in order to cool the market, because, you know, if we carry on as we are, we will never meet supply, because demand will always outstretch it. We've got to tackle demand as well as supply. And I look to my colleague, the Deputy of St Peter's, in that regard, and I think he's taking very big notes on this debate, because everything we do in Jersey is always going to be related to the population on this island. So all I would ask members is to think about the speech from the Constable of St Martin's. We cannot, I don't feel, it cannot be right down all this road to then at the 11th hour pull the rug out from SOJDC to deliver these housing units, which is across tender. It's for social rental, for first-time buyer, and for open market housing for islanders. So, unfortunately, I would love to be able to be in a position to back this, to say, yep, 30%, brilliant. But because of the particular modelling that has been done on this site, and which has been looked at independently by qualified individuals, this isn't, you know, this is what Deputy Massell thinks about the financing. This isn't what Deputy Ward thinks about the financing. What qualified individuals have looked at this request and have said, this really threatens the viability of this site. So today it's not something I can sign up to in its entirety, although I would really like to. So it's more important for me not to stall the process. And can we just talk about the money that's going to be wasted if we have to go back to the drawing board? They've already spent £2 million on one site, £2 million on another site. Do we really want to go around in circles? No, so this is something which has to be delivered for islanders, for not only for housing units, but for the public realm improvements which go along, particularly with the waterfront development. So I urge members to think of the speeches of the Constable of St Helier and the Constable of St Martin's. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Deputy Massell. There's a point of clarification from Deputy Young, if you're prepared to give way.
No, sir, I'm not. Thank you.
Very much. Deputy Ash.
Thank you, sir. It's always a pleasure to follow the previous speaker. I agree with a considerable amount of what he said. I would like to take issue with one of the other previous speakers, Deputy Ward, who gave an emotive display, as he often does, and uses very emotive language. But one thing, and I think it's important we, as an assembly, clear this point up, when he said that people have said, or he insinuated, people have said that if you can't afford one of these properties, you are feckless or lazy. I do not recall any States member ever referring to anybody as feckless or lazy if they could not afford one of these properties. So I thought I would just point that out, sir. I was also delighted to hear that Senator Gorst reiterated what I said yesterday, that government has worked on housing over the last 8 years and that Andium have revolutionised much of our housing. So, and in the spirit of what he said, and in the spirit of what he said yesterday as well, that we all need to pull together, I think we need to revolutionise it a little bit further. And I was very pleased yesterday when the Housing Minister stated that St Saviour's Hospital and Lake Kennevay School will be available for development. And I would say this to the Housing Minister, that my daughter bought on one of these schemes. It's no different when you're in the southeast of England, either to Jersey to get on the property map, and the UK government offered people a £5,000 deposit in order to do so. And a couple of years ago, she took up that option. But where she moved to, so was in Pembury, which is just south of Tunbridge Wells, in a development ironically built by our well-known friends in Jersey, Dandara. But what they did is they have a fantastic mixed development. They've produced this. There are people who've downsized, there are a considerable amount of first-time buyers, and there are people who have upsized, and they're all different types of properties on this development. Plus, they have put in shops, community centre, and a brand new purpose-built primary school. And this makes a great community in one place. And I would like to, and I offer this now to the Housing Minister, if he wishes to join me on a day trip to Tunbridge Wells, and I'll throw in a pub lunch. He is welcome to join me in the new year, and I'll throw that offer into Deputy Gardner as well, because she's very keen on putting a school on a site, and I don't see any reason why we can't combine a school and housing. So there you are. So that's just that I do think we all need to pull together and all put ideas out there. But let's come back to this proposition that we have in front of us to buy 30%. So the economic arguments have been made. We made them yesterday, and the conclusions are there in black and white. 15% shared equity is a balanced scenario. And I, as long as I am shareholder representative, I will speak with SOJDC to see how much we can squeeze that and get more from it. And I'll come to that point because people have said, no, you won't. And I'll come to that point in a short while. But as it stands at the moment, anything above that can create an unacceptable risk and seriously jeopardizes the viability of each development. Now, that's true whether it was 30%, sir, or 50%, as was mooted yesterday. Lenders will not support developments that are not economically viable. That's a fact. Try going to a bank and setting up a business. Say, I want to borrow this money. How much money do you think you'll make? I don't think we'll make anything. I think we'll lose year after year. The bank will not say, well, that sounds a jolly good thing. Here's have a couple of thousand, see how you get on. It's just not it's not real in anybody's world, is it? Even in Deputy Ward's world, that is not real. We can debate all we like, sir, that ministers and officers should allocate more time and effort, that they need to work harder to get a more suitable outcome, as this proposition requires. Fundamentally, sir, we have had an independent review. It says the figures are not viable at 30%. No amount of work or effort is going to change that regrettable truth. I want also, sir, to come back to comments members have made in the briefing on the 11th of November and in this debate about the level of infrastructure and public realm improvements. There's been, and I think other speakers have touched on this, but there's been extensive consultation and engagement that's taken place with the public and planning on both developments, but particularly the waterfront. And the result of this process, and I think islanders who have given their views are 100% right, they're not interested in just creating a housing estate. As Deputy Martin said yesterday, you can create them. Broadwater Farm is a classic example. There were, if you get the train up through what was the Elephant, or still is the Elephant and Castle in London, so you will see the remains of what was the North Peckham estate, which, without putting a finer point on it, are hellholes, and they were just awful places. And I believe, in fact, that the man who created one of these, it might have been the North Peckham, but it was certainly one in that area, when he saw what he created, he killed himself. So that was how bad these situations were, or how they became. So we don't want just a housing estate, and islanders were right, and they said they didn't. They want a destination for our waterfront that can be enjoyed by residents and all islanders alike, and that includes tourists, and one that creates a community. They want a beautiful, attractive landscaping. They value the planned communal facilities that are planned there, a sports centre and a new public parking facility. Now, sir, attractive landscaping and communal facilities and fountains, etc., are all very nice, but they cost money and they do not generate money. We surely want communities served by extensive and modern amenities that contribute to the quality of life, sir, of islanders, all islanders. And that fits squarely within this government's strategic policies. I would go further to say it should fit in any government's strategic policies. But all of that costs money and can only be achieved through returns generated on both developments. So I would urge members also not to be taken in, and someone else mentioned this as well, so that if 15% is affordable, that means 85% is unaffordable. It's rubbish, because we're putting some in for first-time buyers anyway. So let's be clear, sir, on what's been planned, because we're hearing a lot about, oh, it's just 15%, as though that is all that SOJDC are doing. 15%, rest of it will sell to the highest bidder. That isn't the case, sir. And it is absolutely absurd that people have suggested it. Let's first of all then let's have a look at the waterfront. 15%, and as I say, I will try to get that improved, but at the moment it's 15%, will be shared equity. 35% will be sold to first-time buyers. Now, if my maths is right, so that's 50% will not be sold to anybody who just comes along. We've then got 20% sold to households that are right sizing, and in that they will be selling, hopefully their larger 3-4 bedroom houses to local properties. Sorry, so can you just bear with me 1 minute?
That rather depends why.
Thank you very much. I just had to turn the phone down. So I will continue. So that 20% to people who are right sizing. Now, and that will be with assistance, stamp duties paid, removal costs paid, or by SOJDC to try to encourage people to do that. So on South Hill, they are focused on delivering, and this is what I said. They were asked by the Council of Ministers to look to deliver 15%, but they went away, they examined this, and they are delivering 20%, not the 15 that was asked. They've worked it out and they can get to 20%. So they are going to deliver 20% shared equity, 30% to first-time buyers, and 25% to be sold to households that are right sizing. So 75% of those properties will not be sold just to the highest bidder. Now, I appreciate, sir, that message doesn't fit into a neat newspaper soundbite, but perhaps SOJDC's efforts to help the housing needs of all islanders, not just those served by social housing providers on island, are another inconvenient truth. So sometimes I despair at times at the lot of SOJDC because on one hand, some members bemoan the fact that they don't get enough returns, but that forgets the fact that SOJDC as an entity deliver significant public realm improvements on all their developments over and above commercial developers and to higher standards, and as in this case and in the case of the Girls' College, sir, do not just go out and sell it to the highest buyer, because they have certain social responsibilities which they are fulfilling here. So if members want to vote in favour of this proposition, they need to be aware they're doing two things. One, they're going to be ignoring the economic facts, and two, they are, and it is a fact, they are going to be jeopardising the delivery of 1,100 homes. 1,100, sir, of the much needed homes that we are reading and hearing about so much, not just in this assembly, but in the press and on social media. And I'm going to conclude now, sir, but what I want to conclude with is, and I know my good friend Deputy Tadier will like this because he's a great fan of the Monty Pythons, but I'm going to conclude with, what have the SOJDC ever done for us? Well, sir, they may not have delivered wine and aqueducts yet. I expect we may get a proposition stating they should deliver an aqueduct as part of a scheme, but we haven't had it yet. But they have delivered significant financial benefits to government, 17.2 million since 2012. Since 2012, sir, SOJDC has declared cash dividends of 10.5 million, of which 5 million has been ring-fenced for infrastructure projects such as the skate park that is hopefully on its way, improvements to Midvale Road, which are hopefully on their way, and other projects which the money is there, we just need to have the go-ahead, such as access to Fort Regent via Snow Hill. These are all things that are often forgotten. A further 6.7 million of benefits since 2012 have accrued from asset transfers and infrastructure improvements, sir, such as additional parking at Jean Vrin School, widening of Drury Lane to allow parking, Trenton Square. These are just a few of the examples of where money has gone in the public realm. Coupled with all this, SOJDC have delivered modern and desirable office space in the International Finance Centre. They have delivered the outstanding conversion of the College for Girls site. was, and you know, how often I asked members, how long did that site just stand there as almost a monument to the failure of government to do anything about it? Years, until SOJDC came along and improved that and put a considerable number of first-time buyers in it. They've also delivered high quality accommodation at Horizon, South Hill, and the waterfront, sir, will be similar success stories if we let them get on with it, sir. I will just close with a word to Senator Ferguson, who bemoaned the fact that many properties these days, and indeed the Horizon is one, have open plan kitchens. I fully agree with her, but many young people, such as my own children who are now in their 20s, all rather like the open plan kitchen, but I'm with Sarah Ferguson on that one, or Senator Ferguson. Thank you very much, sir, and I really urge people to vote against this.
Thank you very much. Deputy, does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Conatap St Clement, are you able to join us? Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. And I didn't really plan to speak second time, but I have been prompt. Follow invitation of the previous speaker to visit, and I would accept the invitation. And it was several times mentioned through the debate and comment from the housing minister that I prefer school to homes. I would like to clarify that I'm not prefer school to homes, but I would like to have schools next to the homes where the children need to go. But why? But wasn't the reason why I decided to speak. Previous speaker mentioned different percentage of the people who will be like affordable house, first time buy, equity share. So there's a high percentage. And I'm not sure how it cannot be recalculated quickly into the 30% what Senator Mazik is requesting now. Also, Senator Moore offered a way forward, which I can see that it can work, that we still have government plan to debate and amendments can be put quickly within the next 2 days. Senator Ghost mentioned that actually we might be able to do 25. To be honest, cannot see big difference between 25 and 30. We might need to work a bit harder to find how we'll work it out. And what really struck me, it's the word delay. Maybe it's only me that had a deja vu feeling, as earlier this year when we were debating office accommodation, where we didn't have choice. We had one bidder that left us and the only bidder left stayed. And when the members raised why we wouldn't build it in where is the IFC? We've been told it's impossible, it's all progressed, it's all been delayed. And later we're finding out that, oh, actually we don't need too many offices, we might build houses there. The hospital, yes, we did, some of the assembly, some of the members of this assembly, because of the delay, agreed to sign off extra 200+ million. And again, we have delay. Maybe we stop justify everything in the delay. We don't want to delay, but we need to have option to review. And with all previous speeches on both sides, also on the government side, I have very big question mark why we cannot meet 30%. I understand the money is going into the public realm. We have a development of the waterfront, which I also would like to see developed. And because it will happen in 26, we might need to rearrange both of the projects. So for me, the delay, screaming again, I feel like we need to stop, we need to rethink, and government does have time to rethink without making a delay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Deputy Conatap St Clement.
Thank you, sir. Coming in late, I risk repeating some of the comments that various speakers have said before me. I'm wholly opposed to the delay in the waterfront development, and I will definitely be voting contre. It seems to me that Spider-Man is about to slay the golden goose, which is the Jersey Development Company. Jersey Development Company will provide a world-class development with £150 million of free infrastructure. And it seems crazy to me that we're letting the opportunity either be delayed or cancelled altogether. It delivers without doubt both affordable and social housing and opportunities for downsizers with a caveat to sell up to a local family. It is a win-win situation. Yet some of us here who've not run so much of a tuck shop, never mind build one, think otherwise. They argue with international bankers and the Jersey Development Company with its committee of experts and say that they know better. I don't understand it. £700 million development is being taken over by people in the States of Jersey who frankly don't know what they're talking about. The formula is good and the formula is right. The bankers have set a target to evaluate their risk factor. If we take the 30%, their risk is greater. It is really as simple as that. They may cancel or they may delay. The cancellation situation would happen if the factors risk their insurance by devaluing the profit margins to say something below 10%. That's not somewhere we should go. If the development is passed and goes ahead fairly soon, we will have more development, shops, cafes, restaurants, more employment, more taxes coming from that employment and social security. That will happen sooner than later. The flats will be built sooner than later. We know that we are on track to get our other developments up and running to fill the gap in the property problem. We've heard from the Housing Minister and he's confirmed that he's on track to deliver 3,000 homes within the next 5 years. Why would we argue with that? So if this is a cancellation, if the bankers withdraw funding because the margin of error becomes too tight and therefore the risk to them becomes too risky, we have nothing and we've all lost. I will be voting contre the proposition. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Conor Tubb. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? No other member wishes to speak? Then, very well. Yes, Deputy Southern then.
So I'll take my mask off.
Yes, that's fine.
There's been some question around what do we mean by affordable or unaffordable? And why would we be building unaffordable housing now? Do we have a need for unaffordable housing? We do not. Do we have a vital need? And is it our duty as a government to fill the need for affordable housing, putting roofs over people's heads? The answer to that question is yes. That is absolutely our duty. It's the right of our citizens to be housed in decent conditions. And our duty is to supply that need. There can be no question about that. Has been questioned about what do we mean by 85% unaffordable. Well, let's just do some quick sums. We've seen that 2-bedroom properties are going for £500,000 or £600,000, even more, possibly. Let's look at the average family who wish to purchase that sort of property. 2-bed house, no. Accessible, we would hope, but no. What are we talking about? Average wage or one of those earners? Median wage? £32,000, £35,000, thereabouts. Partner, perhaps part-time, maybe £20,000. Just a look at the multiplier. Total income, something like £50,000. The multiplier of 10. That says that those 2-bedroom flats, this 2-bedroom accommodation, are unaffordable for these average people. Only the wealthy end of our market can afford them. Most people, that's unaffordable. Nobody's going to lend you 10 times the going rate. And we're told we've got, wow, £150 million worth of public realm coming along with this. What is that public realm going to be? If this time round we only build unaffordable at 85% and we don't build some more affordable housing, then I'll tell you what that public realm will be. It'll be a shelter, be a homeless shelter down on the waterfront. Because we better tidy them up out of the way, because there will be people made homeless by our policies. That's what will be happening. And I've seen today the classic piece of propaganda, and yesterday, time and time again, kicking the can down the road. One of our deputies managed to say that 4 times in 5 minutes today. But it's the classic propaganda of taking a frightening situation, a fear situation, and saying it again and again and again until it becomes a known fact. And that's what's happened with this delay stroke cost stroke we can't do anything. We're committed to this. That's what has happened. And here we have people hearing that and repeating it. Classic propaganda technique. But let's just have a look at some of the costs that we've been talking about. And I think some of the contributors have worked this out. If we're to have shared equity schemes, that means an investment by SOJ. DC. What's the initials? SOJDC, yeah, okay. That investment comes out of profit for SOJDC. Downsizing for our older couples so that they got the right size of accommodation, again, requires some spend. It comes out of profit. What's the difference between these unique and special schemes to give people access, in quotes, and accepting that we're going to build some affordable, but should be building more affordable accommodation with an impact on the profit margin? Either you do it one way, you do it another. Neither makes these schemes impossible. If we insist on building 85% unaffordable housing, then I believe, yeah, the building that we're going up will be a homeless shelter. I firmly believe that. We cannot afford to miss this option, and we should be prepared.
Very much indeed. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Connetab of St Mary.
Thank you, sir. The crucial question is, are we going to address the affordable housing crisis or not? If so, affordable housing must take priority now. All state sites should be for affordable housing, 100%. That said, some sites are too lucrative to be used for this, such as South Hill, so should be sold to a developer at a maximum price, with the proceeds could then be used for infrastructure elsewhere. The states have other sites which are far more acceptable for affordable housing. We need to saturate the demand for affordable housing in order for other problems, like lack of much needed staff in all aspects of island life, to be catered for. And by affordable housing, I would expect that figure to be £250,000 per unit. Voting for the proposition will achieve nothing at this stage apart from delay. We need to learn from this and maybe we'll achieve better results in the future. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Conatab. Deputy of St Martin.
Thank you, sir. And I hadn't intended to speak, but I can't resist any longer. We've heard a lot about the unacceptable financial risk that this proposition poses, about losing money. We've heard about significant delays and if things are not progressed, and we've heard about how the planning application at the waterfront is ready. It's unusual, sir, that in a debate like this, if you wanted to promote something, you would normally put those plans out, even if they haven't been submitted to planning, for members to see, to encourage them, to show them what to do. And it's a surprise, really, that if we're that close to a planning application, that members haven't been given that information and help, in the hope that they could help them decide and throw out this proposition. Members will have seen, if they've got their emails open, a letter, a response to the Environment Minister from his Director General, which indicates that while the application in principle, the outline application, may be ready to be submitted in the next few weeks, it will be a considerable amount of time before this is built up. And I quote, earliest construction may start in late 2023, and it's then likely to be a number of years to build out in stages. Members need to be clear, sir, this planning application on the waterfront is not a spade in the ground next spring. We've heard about the possibility of building houses at La Collette this morning, sir, from the Minister for External Relations. That's going to be even further away. We've heard about Le Kennevet. Deputy Tadea made a good point. I mean, we haven't even converted the old school to use for a hospital yet, and that would then be to be demolished and applications put through, consultation. We're in a crisis here, sir, and we talk about, the Housing Minister yesterday said he's looking after, or trying to look after, the needs of all islanders. All islanders' needs are being dealt with, he said. Well, he needs to realise, sir, that not only are people leaving this island because of the housing crisis, but they're not coming here because of the housing crisis. People we need in health, in mental health, in education, doctors. It is a real challenge, and we need to address it. On one hand, we're told there's a £5 million difference between saying yes or no this morning to this proposition, and the thing that spurred me to speak, sir, is that there's so much talk about finances to try to put this proposition to bed and consign it to the bin. But surely members need to realise this is a problem which is so much more than just finances. The government have got to realise they've got to put their hand in their pocket now to solve this crisis. It's not about losing money or unacceptable financial risk. This is a situation where government have got to realise they've got to share equity, they've got to build property as economically as they can, and not have these enormous prices that people can't afford to spend. It really is time that we address this issue head on, and I would urge members to support the proposition. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? No other member wishes to speak? Deputy Lahegara.
Thank you, sir. I have brought an amendment to the island plan to remove sites from the north of St Helier which are used by a dairy farmer. At the planning inquiry, a number of people spoke about the importance of using all the brown sites that we have and make sure that that's to an optimum. We cannot continue in this fashion to build affordable houses not on our own sites. Somebody this morning has mentioned finance and whether the bank will think this is affordable or not for SOJDC. Should we change the criteria? Let's remind members, shall we, sir, that SOJDC is a state-owned run company. So therefore, their debt is our debt. So therefore, I do not see that there is a risk. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? If no other member wishes to speak, then I close the debate and call upon Senator Mezek to respond.
Thank you, sir, and thank members who've taken part in this debate. There's always a risk when a debate goes overnight that conversations happen in the evening or officers are set to come up with rebuttal arguments for ministers based on what was said in the debate that day. So it's always a very nervous experience when that happens. And I note, sir, that in terms of rebuttal arguments being put together, that hasn't happened this morning. I, in my opening speech yesterday, advanced two main arguments. The first was that the numbers that are provided in the Objective Assessment of Housing Needs report, which these developments are based on, are out-of-date numbers that are no longer relevant. And I also argued that the financial assessment provided on this was faulty because it was based on benchmarks which were set that didn't have to be set that way and didn't explore alternatives. And I note today, not a single minister has stood up to contradict either of those points. And the reason that they haven't done that is because they can't. What I said was simply factual. It is a fact that the SOJDC is basing their building programme for homes on the OAHN report. I went to the town hall briefing and that's what they said at it. And the OAHN is out of date. It understates the need for affordable housing and it overstates the need for open market housing. And if I was wrong when I said that, a minister would have stood up this morning and said that, but they haven't because they can't say that because it is true. Deputy Pinnell, the Treasury Minister, yesterday said at the start of her speech that she thought that she was at risk of sounding like a broken record. And I would say it was more than a risk, sir, it was a certainty, because she reiterated the point that there has been an independent financial assessment of this, and she urged us not to forget the viability demonstrated in that. What she didn't do was give any indication of whether, when that independent assessment was commissioned, whether there were any instructions given about what benchmarks and assumptions they were basing it on, or whether there was any room for manoeuvre or any alternatives or flexibility in that. And I presume that the reason she wasn't able to do that was because they were not offered that flexibility or those alternatives. So, sir, this financial viability assessment we have before us, which ministers are using to say that it's simply a matter of fact that what I'm proposing isn't viable, is completely wrong. There were other ways of working out viability on this by looking at what the shared equity percentage is, looking at what the payback for the value of the land would be. There were ways of looking at this. And they chose not to do that, so don't be surprised when you end up with the numbers that you end up with it. And nobody sought to contradict those points. So instead, they've done what Deputy Southern very rightly pointed out, was that they have manufactured a propaganda argument against this and then simply repeated it ad nauseum in the hope that some people will fall for it. And it's the argument that in adopting this proposition, it will inevitably delay the delivery of some homes, whether they're the right homes or not, but it would delay the delivery of some homes. And so I resist the temptation to point out or to spend time pointing out that most of those who advanced that argument were members who voted against releasing Anne Court for housing. And Anne Court, when that is released for housing, is going to cut the band 1 for 1-bedroom homes by half in one go, providing homes to people in our island who are desperate for them, people facing homelessness, people in insecure accommodation. Some of these will even be people whose families are breaking up and they need to find their own places. Some members were willing to delay it when it came to homes for our most vulnerable, but when it comes to homes for the super wealthy in Jersey, as some of these homes will be, then a completely different standard is applied. And so I say, sir, to Deputies Martin, Wickenden and Masson, keep making those speeches, keep making them, because they are from an alternative universe which people out there in this island simply don't recognise. So Deputy Martin, in her speech, she said she wanted to talk about 3 stories. Obviously, she was inspired by the testimonies that I gave in my speech on this yesterday morning. And I was listening to those testimonies, or not testimonies actually, because that's not what they are. They were her versions of these stories. She referred to one that was 8 years ago, where somebody bought their home 8 years ago. I remind her that in the last year alone, the price of an average home has gone up by £97,000. That's £1,865 a week. There are people who are living in homes that are earning more than they are from their wages. That's how bad the inflation in housing costs is. So a case from 8 years ago is really not relevant. And of course, she also spoke about the people in the waterfront area who've been consulted over this. And she referred to a residents' meeting down at the waterfront a few weeks ago, which I attended, and her recollection of that meeting was accurate. But sir, there has been no consultation with the wider public on the point, do we want to have 15% affordable homes in this development or 30%? There has actually not been a consultation on that point alone. And I am willing to put a lot of money on it that if you did consult on that point, that it would not come back the way that some of these government members are suggesting it would come back. You would have, I believe, a lot of people out there who would simply not understand why publicly owned land was being used to build properties, 85% of which would be unaffordable to the average person in Jersey. And I say, sir, as Deputy Martin was speaking, I actually received a message from somebody who lives at Castle Quay. And it was not directly connected to this, but I'd messaged them back saying, oh, by the way, just as a resident of Castle Quay, what do you think about the homes that are going to be built in your neighbourhood? Do you think 15% should be affordable or 30%? Sir, I don't need to tell you what he responded with, because we all know what he responded with. And that will be the wider feeling out there as well. So I think that on that, they really are out of touch. And that is why they've had to manufacture this argument about delay instead. In fact, it was the main basis of the Constable of St Clement's speech. I know he's had trouble logging in this morning. He may have also had trouble logging into his emails, because we have, of course, had an email now that comes from a Director General of a government department confirming that the waterfront development is not ready to go, and it's not even close. So this idea that in adopting this proposition today, we are delaying the delivery of homes on the waterfront, potentially even forgetting it entirely, is just simply not true. The entire basis of the Constable of St Clement's speech, I'm sorry to say to him because he's a new member, but the entire basis of it has been disproven by that one email that we've received. And I hope on that basis he'll be able to backtrack on it, because we have now demonstrated that this is not the case for the waterfront. And so I think it's also not the case for South Hill, for 2 reasons, I think. The first, sir, is even if you're going to go by this financial assessment, at 30%, South Hill's still profitable. Still profitable, so you can still go ahead with it. And this talk about trouble securing loans for the SOJDC to be able to do it, well, there's still a reasonable profit margin on 30% anyway. And let's not forget, the SOJDC is owned by the government. Banks like borrowing money to institutions that are backed by the government because it's pretty safe money. And so I don't think it would delay it on that basis. But also, they have got a planning application in, and to marginally alter it, maybe, is still a possibility at this point. I don't think that would take too long to do that, especially when you look at the benchmarks that were set in that financial viability assessment. They're saying that shared equity percentage should be 30% of the homes that are sold. Andium only offers 25. So, sir, if it makes the numbers work out a bit better, have the SOJDC be just as generous as Andium. That would help out, wouldn't it? That's still an option. No need for consultation, no need to come back to us. They can get on with that, and that makes it more financially viable. So, sir, this argument that it's about delay is completely manufactured and simply doesn't hold up to scrutiny. The Constable of Trinity adumbrated the argument that has, I think, been the most genuine and sincere one that I have had put to me, not just by him, but by others as well, who have looked at my suggestion that we use South Hill to provide more affordable housing, and has said that when you have sites like this, perhaps it's a better idea to try and make as much money as you can out of them so that you can provide affordable housing elsewhere. In fact, I made a note of how he said it. He said that the profits realised from these schemes could be invested into affordable homes, which will offer so much more. That is actually a tangible statement. It will offer more. Well, my response to that is prove it. Will it actually offer more? If somebody can say to me that by taking 10 affordable homes out of the South Hill scheme will present enough revenue to then provide 15 affordable homes elsewhere, so that person would be taking some wind out of my sails. So if they're capable of demonstrating those numbers, please go ahead and do it, and let's see them, let's scrutinise them, and let's see if they're credible. But sir, they don't present those numbers. They just rely on this principle that you could use that money to provide more homes elsewhere without actually demonstrating it. And I think that's because they can't demonstrate it. Because when trying to provide those more affordable homes elsewhere, you'd have to factor in the cost of land that we don't own, by profiteering out of land that we do own and could use for free if we wanted to. So actually, I don't think the numbers would add up if they actually put the effort in to working out how much they could offer elsewhere. But then it goes back to this other point, sir, which is that we shouldn't be arguing about doing this instead of, we should be arguing about doing this in addition to. Earlier this week, the Housing Minister announced the Kennervay School, the old Kennervay School site and St Saviour's Hospital as sites for housing. He didn't stipulate that those would be affordable housing, but I presume we'll get to that at some other point in the future. Bearing in mind that the Kennervay School site will not be available for a very long period of time, and it is dependent on the hospital project going well, which we all wish that it does go well, but it's possible that it doesn't, and so there of course could be delays there. St Saviour's Hospital could run into problems as well. But those are completely unconnected to this. Philip Lefevre House is totally unconnected to this. Westerway Court is totally unconnected to this. Labar Centre, totally unconnected. There are all of these other sites on government-owned land that we are able to proceed with if there is a decent plan coming forward on those. That will not be affected one bit by this proposition. This can be seen in isolation in terms of its delivery, but I'm saying that we shouldn't look at it as instead of, it should be in addition to, because, and that goes back right to the points I made at the very start of this debate, our own projections for our need for affordable housing are understated in the official figures that these bodies are working from. And sir, the Housing Minister, he used a couple of phrases that I think were very telling. He said on more than one occasion, I think he said this twice, he started a sentence by saying, the CEO of the SOJDC tells me. And then he also said that it had been said to him that the biggest threat to the plans of the SOJDC, to Andium, to Ports of Jersey, is us, the politicians. It's very telling, those phrases, because I think that that shows, sir, that the tail is wagging the dog here. The Housing Minister says that the CEO of the SOJDC tells him, no, sir, he should be telling the CEO of the SOJDC, because we own it. It's as its entire raison d'etre is to deliver on our ambitions as a democratically elected body, elected by the people to serve out their hopes and aspirations for our community. It is not the other way round. It is not for the SOJDC to tell us, this is what we're doing, please now go out and be our spokespeople for it. It's for us to say and look at their plans, examine them, and when they're doing a great job, say, yes, thank you very much, keep going. And that's why they're arm's length, so that politicians aren't having to be involved in the day-to-day side of the delivery. But we are there to set the policy priorities and the high-level visions here. So when they say that we are the biggest threat to their plans, no, we are the saviours of their plans, because we're the ones who are elected by the public and can ensure that what they then go on to deliver is actually what we want, not what unaccountable people decide is best for us, what we actually decide is best for us. So, sir, if we say to the SOJDC, thank you for your work thus far, but on the basis that we have a housing crisis, on the basis that we desperately need more affordable housing for those people who are struggling, and for those who otherwise would not have an opportunity to own their own home, that we'd like you actually to do better. We think that you can do that, and we'll help you do that. And we can do that by amending these benchmarks that have been presented to us as if they're unamendable when they're not unamendable. We can do that, and we can deliver better for the people of Jersey. We can deliver more affordable housing for them. And we can hopefully, in the process, restore a bit of faith in this political process, which I think is rock bottom at the moment. And Deputy Wickenden said he would be interested in the headlines that this would produce if this was adopted, saying states votes to delay this again. So I tell him, we adopt this, the headline tomorrow is going to be a positive one. They're going to say, great, after a couple of weeks where the dialogue about the housing crisis /challenge /problem has been pretty undignified, at least the States has done one good thing in committing to increasing the supply of affordable housing on the islands. We will be thanked for this and not denigrated for it. So I think his judgment there is completely wrong. So I think I've addressed most of the points there. That this is feasible, it is doable, it is democratically possible to do, because ultimately this chamber is the body that is in charge, not the states-owned companies. The numbers which are being used to produce the current plans are out of date. They understate the need for affordable housing and overstate the need for open market housing. And the financial viability assessment, which says this isn't possible, is flawed, because benchmarks were set that could have been altered, or could have a variety of benchmarks could have been set to give some flexibility to work out what the different options were. And this doesn't delay it. We've had the email now demonstrating that won't have to be the case for the waterfront, and it doesn't really have to be the case for South Hill either, because on whatever terms you look at it, it's still profitable even with 30%. And if there are any minor changes that need to be made to the planning application, they don't have to take that much time either. They've already changed them a few times themselves anyway. So this proposition is feasible. It won't delay these schemes, and it will see a delivery of a greater proportion of affordable homes, the homes that Jersey people need. When we're facing this housing crisis, I urge states members to take action to deal with it and support this proposition and give that instruction to the SOJDC to continue their work, but to provide a greater supply to those people who genuinely need that extra support to get on the housing ladder. So I have nothing more to say on that, and I ask for the appel.
Appel is called for. I ask the greffier to place a voting link, a vote into the link. And I ask the greffier to open the voting and members to vote.
I appear to have a glitch. No.
Which way will you be voting?
I will be voting for, if I'm allowed, sir.
Right. Members have had the opportunity. Of casting their votes. Then I ask the greffier to, but before we do so, Deputy Tadier, is that a serious point of order?
So I think there's a need for verification. It's not directed at any one individual, but when we are meeting online, and I noticed that we haven't heard from, I don't know. It's just I certainly wouldn't refer to myself in the third person, and well, I just want to make sure that nobody's logging on anyone's behalf as a general rule, sir. But I know we have to trust members as well.
Other members do refer to themselves in the third person for clarification as to their vote. Not everyone is as familiar with IT as others, and there is no.
That's fine. So I'll take that. But it wasn't meant to be.
No. Which deputy were you asking this of? Were you asking it for the Connétable St Clement?
That's right. So sorry, yeah, I got the name wrong, didn't I? The title.
Yes. Well, the Connétable St Clement has spoken in the debate. Okay. I mean, there's no, and he's done so recently. So I don't think there's anything to be done about that. If members have had the opportunity of casting their votes, I ask the greffier to close the voting. And the proposition has been defeated. 17 votes pour, 19 votes contre, no abstentions in the link, and a further 3 votes pour and 8 votes contre in the chat.
Could we have the both ways, please, sir?
Could we have both sides, please, counted, named out?
Those voting in the chat, those voting for in the chat, Senator Moore, the Deputy of St Martin, and then those voting in the link voting for, Deputy Ward, Senator Valois, the Connétable of St John, Deputy Higgins, Deputy Young, the Connétable of St Martin, Deputy Pamplin, Deputy Gardner, the Connétable of St Lawrence, Senator Pallett, Senator Mezek, Deputy Lehegerat, Deputy of St John, Deputy Doublé, Deputy Morel, Deputy Cadier, and Deputy Alves. In the chat, those voting contre, the Connétable of St Mary, Deputy Pinel, Deputy Masson, Deputy of Trinity, the Connétable of St Clement, Senator Ferguson, and Deputy Martin, and the Connétable of St Peter, and those voting contre in the link, Deputy Wickenden, the Connétable of St Helier, the Connétable of St Juan and Grouville, Deputy Truscott, Senator Farnham, Senator Le Fondre, the Deputy of Grouville, Deputy Guida, Deputy Ayer, the Deputy of St Mary, the Connétable of St Brelard, Deputy Ash, the Deputy of St Juan, the Connétable of Trinity, Senator Gorst, Deputy Lewis, Deputy Labby, and Deputy of St Peter.
Very well. Before moving on to the next item of public business, I allowed an urgent oral question to be put by Deputy Ward to the Minister for Children Education. I will ask the Deputy to put his question, and I will allow the same amount that I allowed for supplementary questions in the questions with notice on Tuesday, namely a maximum of 10 minutes for supplementary questions following the question given by the Minister. Deputy Ward, if you'd like to put your question.
Yes, so I'd like to start just by apologising to the Assembly for adding something else to the agenda, but it is a duty of a scrutiny chair to pursue information. So can I ask the Minister, will the Minister explain why we have not received any formal response, including the documentation requested, following the statement from the Children Education and Home Affairs Scrutiny Panel on Tuesday, and when this information will be forthcoming? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Sir, I wasn't asked to issue any formal response following the statement, nor do I see the need for one, as nothing has changed. The panel made it clear to me last week they would issue a statement if I did not provide information for the start of sitting. Sir, I wrote to the chair of the panel on Monday this week advising that the inclusion review is still in draft and is scheduled for further review and then sign off at the Council of Ministers on the 30th of November this year. After this panel, we'll then get the report. And sir, at a hearing with the panel on the 1st of November, the panel was advised that the school funding formula was not complete, and I would share more information with them towards the end of December. Additionally, sir, in questions without notice on Tuesday this week, I once again made my position clear within this Assembly. Sir, my decision to wait until the final draft of the inclusion review has been considered by my colleagues is consistent with how we dealt with the school funding review in 2020. The panel requested early sight of that report too, but the Minister at the time considered it correct that it could only be shared after it had been to COM. I agree with this previous approach. So in the case of the school funding formula, the panel are asking me to provide something I simply do not have. I cannot share unfinished work, sir, and I've advised the panel more than once that we plan to update on this towards the end of December. Sir, the information will be forthcoming in accordance with the previous commitments I have made to the panel and in recent communications outside and within this Assembly. I will share the inclusion review after it's been finalised and has been to Council Ministers, and I will share more information on the funding formula once work has been finalised towards the end of December. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Supplementary question, Deputy Ward?
Yes, sir. Can I ask the Minister, can he confirm that he has seen and read the SEN review, and which part of the code of engagement with scrutiny means that documents go to the Council of Ministers before they go to scrutiny? Thank you, sir.
So I've read the inclusion review. I've had a briefing through Nassine, and I'm setting up a briefing for Con with Nassine. I've offered a briefing with Nassine, who did the review for the inclusion review, to the panel. They haven't responded yet on whether they want a review or not. The code of practice, there's nothing in there that states that it goes to Con, but as the Minister, I've chosen that it's only fair to share it with my colleagues in government before it goes to scrutiny, because that's when the finalisation of the report will be done, and that's when scrutiny can ask me questions on the finalisation of the report and what the outcomes of the report will be, sir.
Senator Mezek.
Well, so following on from that previous answer where he said he doesn't have to do it this way, that there would be options, does he not think that it might be at least helpful for the scrutiny panel, given that we really do not have a lot of time before the government plan is debated, and that making sure that there is appropriate education funding is something that's fundamental and that we all agree on? Does he not think that it might be helpful at least to share with the scrutiny panel in good time so they do have time to conduct their work? And is there any option for even showing some draft findings or draft recommendations to them so that they've got some idea what they might be working with?
Sir, as timing will show right now, as I have not finalised the report for the inclusion review, and I do not have the funding formula, just by the very nature of the timings that they're not complete yet, means that they were not part of the government plan considerations, apart from a sum of money that was no different to the sum of money that was put in the previous government plan for the early years policy development board work, when that paper had not been delivered or published yet. Money has been put aside, a block of money in the government plan for consideration after these reviews are finished, very much like the early years policy development board. But these documents themselves were not part of what the government plan was set up in any of my submissions within the government plan, sir. So I don't see how their relevance to the government plan meet by the very nature of the timing of these reports, sir.
Supplemental, Senator? Very well. Deputy Doublé, you've indicated a point of order. It wouldn't normally be to have one during a question, but what is your point of order?
Thank you, sir. I'm not certain, and perhaps you can advise whether the deputy is misleading the Assembly, because he stated, "I cannot share unfinished work." And given that other ministers that the panel scrutinises has shared unfinished work, a work in progress, have been extremely cooperative, I wonder if that is a true statement. I wonder if you could actually rule on that, please.
Well, I don't think I can generally rule on whether or not someone is misleading the Assembly, because I won't necessarily know what the position is, and I'll simply have heard conflicting views. However, simply I cannot share does not necessarily imply a legal impossibility or a procedural impossibility of sharing. It may imply an entirely strong preference, and therefore I don't think I can interpret that as misleading, even were I asked to do so, were it proper for me to do so. Very
Thank
well.
you, sir. I think perhaps the point. Sorry,
sorry.
I think perhaps the point of order is there anything within our standing orders or any of the codes of engagement that states that a minister cannot share unfinished work or work that is still in draft?
Well, I'm not sure that's a point of order for the conduct of this debate and this hearing before the Assembly. It would require me to sit down and research the matter, which is clearly would interrupt the answering of this question, and I won't be in a position to do that. So I'm afraid I can't rule on that at this time, even were it appropriate for me to do so. Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. And I will change my question. I would like the Minister to advise that his inability to share, is it from his perspective legally bound, or it's his preference, personal preference? Thank you.
Sir, I'm choosing that the right course of action is for a report to be considered by government, by my colleagues and council ministers, with then recommendations on a way forward that then can be scrutinised on the way forward and the document be shared. That's my preference. It was a preference of my predecessor, quite clearly, and I share it.
Supplemental, Deputy Gardner? Yes.
If I remember correctly, Minister mentioned that the new formula will be introduced from January. If the formula is not finished, how would it be possible to introduce formula from January? And if not from January, when it will be introduced?
So there is monies in the government plan to work towards what the formula is. If the monies aren't enough, I have a right within my powers to go to the council ministers and request that we put more monies in to meet with the formula. And as the public finances state, a agreed government plan can only be amended by a proposition from the council ministers, and that's what I would seek, sir.
Well, I should add that I've counted back in an additional 45 seconds to meet the point of order that had been raised. Deputy Masson.
Thank you, sir. For clarity then, can the Minister confirm that the documents being requested, because the government plan has been a long process, therefore weren't available during the time of the formulation of the government plan?
I can, yes, sir, I can confirm that these documents were not available during the formulation of the submission to the government plan, but as we have in the past, and my predecessor has in the past, we have put an amount of money aside within the government plan in recognition that these documents will be finished over the term of the government plan enactment.
Well, supplemental, Deputy Masson.
Yeah, thank you, sir. And given that that's the Minister's preferred process, is the Minister able to confirm that under the Part B minutes for the Council of Ministers, scrutiny can request any relevant documentation?
Yes, sir, that is absolutely correct. Once that's been done through Council Minister, sir.
Well, Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, sir. The reason why this is so important is the panel has had evidence from schools that the schools are being underfunded by at least £23 million. Can the Minister indicate whether the finances he's put into the government plan allow for an increase to cover the overall funding shortfall, irrespective of what the funding formula says?
So I don't believe that the panel has received evidence. They've received an opinion from somebody that there's a 23 million, but as far as I'm aware, no evidence has been requested by the scrutiny panel to back up that opinion, sir.
Supplementary, sir. Has the minister been contacted by head teachers saying they are underfunded?
Sir, I have not, sir.
Very well. I have Deputy Doublé, then Senator Varwa. That is the end of questions other than the final supplementary for Deputy Ward. Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister advise who has advised him not to release these documents, please? And what specific concerns does he have that might happen if he does release them?
Sir, I'm the Minister. Nobody has advised me not to release the documents. I have listened to what has happened in the past, and I agree with the process that's been followed by previous education ministers. And I believe that it's only fair to my government colleagues that they get to consider the document before it goes anywhere else, and they have to agree on the outcomes. As a government, we work together. So nobody has advised me, sir. I am the Minister. I choose the course of direction, sir.
Supplemental, Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. So just to clarify, the Minister is stating he has not taken advice from his officers on this matter.
Yes, sir. I have chosen the course of action, sir.
Senator Varwa.
Yes, thank you, sir. I wonder if the Minister could advise what he believes is an appropriate evidence base, and therefore whether the announcement that there's going to be a deficit in school funding by 2.9 million by the Finance Officer in the hearing on the 1st of November, whether that would be considered a need under the government plan.
So our Finance Officer agreed that schools have run at a deficit and that we have put £11.6 million into the government plan for directly in schools that will address the deficit that has been seen year on year through schools, plus additional monies of up to about £1.8 million. So the evidence is regarding that schools have been running at a deficit year on year. We have taken that deficit into consideration, including about £2.8 million deficit spending due to COVID. And once COVID goes away, that 2.8 million will stay within the funding of the school, sir. And that is all clear and ready to be scrutinised on the basis of what has been put into government plan, sir.
Supplemental, Senator Balwa.
Yes, thank you, sir. And in terms of an evidence base, can I ask the Minister if it does determine that there is an extra funding requirement from the school funding formula, where he will be obtaining those funds from within what is set out in the tables for the heads of expenditure as per the documents in front of us on P90?
Sir,
I'm sorry, Senator, that takes us too far outside the ambit of the urgent question, which was about the provision of information to the scrutiny panel and not generally funding, I'm afraid. Very well, final supplementary, Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. May I ask the Minister, can he confirm that when the Education Reform Programme report was produced, it was 2 months before the government plan, and so therefore any outcomes could be acted upon? However, does he understand that by not having sight of any of these documents, the SCM review or the school funding formula, it makes it almost impossible for the scrutiny panel to comment on the adequacy or not of funding in the government plan for next year's education budget?
So I will state again that these documents weren't part of the formula of the funding within the government plan. The formula and the recognition of what is in the government plan is set out in the government plan. These documents will not address the decisions made in the government plan for scrutiny, sir.
So I'm sorry, sir, but I have to push this. Part of the government plan is demographic funding, and if that's going to be on the new funding formula, what has just been said is simply not true.
Your strong feeling that you have to push it, I'm afraid, doesn't fit it within the question as such. And the supplemental answer, the answer to the final supplementary has been given. It is adequate or it is not, as the case may be, but it has been given. Very well. The next item of public business is Jersey Consumer Council reappointment of chairman, P97. Lodged by the Minister for Economic Development, Tourism, Sport and Culture. For the purposes of this debate, the main respondent will be the Chair of the Economic and International Affairs Scrutiny Panel. And I ask the greffier to read the proposition.
The states are asked to decide whether they are of opinion to refer to their act dated 2nd of February 2011 regarding the Jersey Consumer Council, and in accordance with paragraph B2 of Jersey Consumer Council Future Mandate, E 182 of 2010, to approve the reappointment of Mr. Carl Walker as chairman of the Jersey Consumer Council for a further term of 3 years with effect from the 14th of April 2021.
Deputy Morell, I understand you're rapporteur for this?
That's correct, sir.
Yes. Yes, please.
Thank you. Sir, I'm pleased to propose the appointment of Mr. Carl Walker as chair of the Jersey Consumer Council for a further 3 years until April 2024. Mr. Walker is well known in the island as a champion of consumer issues and has really put the council in a leading role during the pandemic. Not only did he help calm panic buying behaviour, but he also, with the council, helped establish the Bag of Basics initiative that saw essentials being delivered to islanders' homes during the difficult period of lockdown. Sir, I would like to inform the Assembly that this appointment has not gone to a competitive process, because the law affords the chair the opportunity to extend their tenure for a second period of 3 years. However, the maximum Mr. Walker can serve is 6 years, so this will be the last of his 2 terms. I do hope the Assembly is minded to support the continuation of Mr. Walker's excellent work. Before making the proposition, I'd also like to thank all members of the Consumer Council, whose dedication to their work, which except for the chair is on an honorary basis, is inspirational. As we enter a period of inflation, we all need a strong and effective Consumer Council to guide and protect islanders, and I believe Mr. Walker is the right person to lead that work. Sir, I move the proposition.
Proposition seconded.
Yes, sir.
You, Deputy Higgins. Deputy Higgins.
Yes, thank you, sir. The Assistant Minister has just said that all the positions are honorary with the exception of the chairman. And in the financial and manpower implications, it mentions that the grant funding for the Consumer Council is £87,000 per annum. However, can the Minister say whether this is the candidate or the current chairman's sole role, or is he also employed by the States of Jersey, either in the communications department or for the future hospital? Because I do note that he's been privy to a lot of the private briefings that States members.
Sorry, you've gone silent, Deputy. Had you finished? Deputy Higgins, we've lost your speaking. Had you finished your speech? Deputy Higgins?
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry,
Yes.
I don't know if members heard the last of my question.
No, we lost your speech at around about the time that you were suggesting that the candidate might have been privy to a number of confidential briefings.
Yes, so and just basically my question is quite simply for transparency, is he employed by the states in other capacities and paid in those capacities? Thank you, sir.
Very much. Deputy Masson.
Thank you, sir. I thoroughly support this appointment. I think this individual and his team have worked incredibly well over their tenure so far. But again, when we come to these types of roles, I think attracting other people to these positions are very important. And I wonder from this debate whether the Assistant Minister might take away as a constructive point, as a recommendation, is that on any reports, the annual reports produced by the Consumer Council, more clarity about the role is given, what exactly is undertaken by the chair, in order that any potential candidates in the future have a really good understanding about the requirements of the role, because I'm of the belief if more people understand what these roles actually entail, you'll get more candidates coming forward. And I wonder perhaps if the Assistant Minister will be able to comment on that. Thank you, sir.
Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? No other member wishes to speak? Then I close the debate and call upon the Assistant Minister to respond.
Thank you, sir. And I'd like to thank both Deputy Higgins and Deputy Masson for their questions. So with regard to Deputy Higgins, Mr. Walker is employed elsewhere in government, and that is, as I understand it, a salaried role. I can't comment on what briefings he has or hasn't received or gone into. As it states in the report, the position being spoken about today, or being debated, so to speak, today, receives a small stipend of £10,000 a year for the work which is undertaken by the chair, and so that would be in addition to his ordinary work, if I can say that, as an employee of the Government of Jersey. There was a question, sir, about whether that work in the Government of Jersey created a conflict, and that is one of the reasons why this appointment was slightly delayed. I'm very pleased to say that the Consumer Council, which, as I mentioned earlier, except for the chair, is entirely voluntary. The Consumer Council itself wrote to me and then met with me without the chair being present, explaining that, number one, they had spoken with the chair about any perceived conflict and put measures in place to make sure that where a conflict arose, the chair would excuse himself from those discussion points. And also to give, and I think this is extremely important, their full and unconditional support to the reappointment of Mr. Walker as chair. So I, sir, and I know the Minister, have full confidence in both Mr. Walker and all members of the Consumer Council to continue working extremely well in their positions. With regard to Deputy Masson, I think the Deputy has a point with regard to clarity in the role, and one of the things that I would absolutely attribute to Mr. Walker's chairmanship of the Consumer Council is that he himself has helped define that role through the activity of the past three and a half years. And I will take on board Deputy Masson's comments, because I think, especially as we move through this term of 3 years, towards the we will need to find somebody else to do the role in 3 years' time. And I think it only right that they have a very clear definition of the task they expect to undertake and how they're expected to lead the Consumer Council into the future. With that, sir, I make the proposition.
Well, I ask the greffier to put a voting link into the chat. I open the voting and ask members to vote. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. I ask the greffier to close the voting. Appointment has been made. The proposition adopted. 36 votes pour, no votes contre, no abstentions in the link, and a further 8 votes pour in the chat. No contre votes, no abstentions. Very well. The next item of public business is minimum wage increase P98 lodged by Deputy Southern. There's an amendment to this proposition lodged by the Minister for Social Security. Deputy, are you minded to accept the Minister's amendment?
No, sir.
Very well. I ask the greffier to read the proposition.
The states are asked to decide whether they are of opinion. A, to request that the Minister for Social Security, when prescribing the minimum wage or referring matters regarding the minimum wage to the Employment Forum for consideration in accordance with the Employment Jersey Law 2003 as relevant, ensures that any such decision or consideration takes into account the view of the Assembly that from January 2022, the minimum wage should be set at an hourly rate of £9.45. B, to request that the Minister for Social Security, when prescribing the minimum wage or referring matters regarding the minimum wage to the Employment Forum for consideration in accordance with the Employment Jersey Law 2003 as relevant, ensures that any such decision or consideration takes into account the view of the Assembly that by October 2022, the level of the minimum wage should be lifted to the hourly rate of £10. And C, to request that the Minister for Social Security, following consultation with the Employment Forum and other stakeholders as appropriate, devise a scheme to be brought to the states by the end of 2022 to convert the minimum wage over time to a living wage as set by Caritas, including any legislative changes that may be necessary.
Deputy Southern.
Thank you, sir. And I rise to my feet once more with a smile on my face, because this is a familiar position for me. I'm suggesting that this Assembly gets political and actually decides, or helps to decide, what the level of the minimum wage should be. I believe this is a political decision that we should not be leaving to others in its entirety, but can adjust as we see fit. And this year, I'm suggesting we've got extra reason to suggest minor changes. And that is because the usual method of consulting the Employment Forum has not taken place this year. Instead, the Minister has done her own survey and consultation over what the level should be and has come out with her own answer for the level of the wage in 2022. And that fits in with internationally accepted practice that that fits with an old measure that we put into the legislation back in 2018, which says that the minimum wage should be set at 45% of the average, that is the mean earnings, by the end of 2020. And we've met that particular target somewhat late. We met it finally. In the meantime, however, we've seen two things happen. One, that the market for jobs has moved substantially in recent months. In that, in the low pay sectors particularly, you cannot find a sous chef, you can't find a barman, you can't find a low paid worker, because wages have gone up. That low paid workers seem to have disappeared. And when devising my proposition, my 45% or £9.45 is seen by many in the sector as being not enough and way behind the mark. So what we're faced with is chasing what the reality of the market is, which is that the minimum wage appears to be somewhere of the order of at least £12. As one person said to me, I don't get out of bed for less than £12. It's simply not enough. And nonetheless, despite that, my proposition says that instead of the old standard, which relied on the average mean earnings, what we should do, which is recommended by the UK Low Pay Commission, by the OECD, is to set the wage in relation to the median wage being not affected by a number of high earners. And actually 60% of the median wage defines the relative low income level. So what it says is that if you set to 60% of the median weekly wage, then what you get is a rate of £9.45. So this compares with the minister's estimate of £9.22. Only a small difference between the two, but I believe that is an important one. I believe that we are playing catch up, and trying to get to what we many of us believe is the true position, that what we should be doing is setting the minimum wage at the living wage. And what my attempt is to get closer to the living wage, so that when we come to considering a living wage, that is the right level, that gap between what we're paying on the minimum wage and that level for the living wage is not too great. And what we've got here are 3 paragraphs, which I believe can all be taken separately, independent of each other. And just confirm that, Mr. President. You just confirm that
they
all
can.
3
there's no reason. I think I would just like to reflect on that, if I may.
By all means.
Yes, they can be taken separately.
Thank you, sir.
But that is, of course, a matter, and that's a matter for you, indeed.
Yes, sir. So what we've got then is 2 propositions in front of us. My own, which talks about a minimum wage of £9.45 and breaks that the progress of raising the minimum wage into two stages. One in January this year, 2022, and one in October 2022. I'm suggesting that we move to £10 in October of next year, getting ready to get close to the living wage, which currently is at £10.96 and will be going up in the near future, I think, to something like £11 and who knows, perhaps £11.20, that sort of order. And the minister's method, which has come out with a figure of £9.22, I believe that mine is the better figure, and I stand by it, and I wait to hear the reasons why the Minister believes otherwise. Thank you, sir.
Much indeed. Is the proposition seconded?
Yes, sir.
There is an amendment lodged by the Minister for Social Security, and I ask the greffier to read the amendment.
Page 2, paragraphs A and B. The paragraphs A and B substitute the following paragraph and redesignate the remaining paragraph accordingly. A, to set the objective of raising the minimum wage to 2/3 of the median earnings by the end of 2024, subject to consideration of economic conditions and the impact on competitiveness and employment of the low paid in Jersey, and to request the Employment Forum to have regard to this objective when making its recommendations on the level of the minimum wage to the Minister for Social Security. Page 2, paragraph C. For paragraph C, substitute the following paragraph. B, to request the Minister for Social Security, further to the Act of the States dated 20th of April 2021, in which P11 of 2021 was adopted, which requested the Minister for Social Security, in accordance with Article 19(1) of the Employment Jersey Law 2003, to refer for examination to the Employment Forum the potential for the minimum wage be set at the level of the Jersey living wage, and if this were considered feasible, when the minimum wage could be set at that level, and following consultation with the Employment Forum and other stakeholders as appropriate, to examine the feasibility of devising a scheme to be brought to the states to convert the minimum wage over time to a living wage, including any legislative changes that may be necessary.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Yes, my first amendment would replace a specific figure in the Deputy's proposition with a proposal that the Assembly agrees a new target of 2/3 of the median wage for the level of the minimum wage within a fixed period of time, and to achieve this by the end of 2024, sir. The Assembly gave me authority to set the minimum wage rate from the 1st of January, and I have announced that this will be £9.22 an hour, achieving the 45% target set some time ago by this Assembly. In deciding on the new rate, we didn't pluck a figure out of the air. We did the analysis of all the economic data the Employment Forum would usually rely on, and we had discussions with relevant bodies. Businesses are already gearing up for this rate, sir. In contrast, sir, the Deputy provides no evidence to support the figures he sets out, a rise to £9.45 from the 1st of January and another increase to £10 from October. This figure, I think, is mentioned in the Reform Jersey Manifesto of 2018, but much has changed since then. The Deputy provides no information about the impact of these increases and whether they are sustainable. It would be foolish and reckless to ignore the fact that some sectors of our economy are still in a perilous state. Sectors which are often most impacted by increases in the minimum wage. To ask businesses to absorb a further increase at the rate the Deputies are proposing would, for many of them, be gambling with their future and the future of their employees. The Deputy refers to involvement of the Forum. The reality of his proposition, sir, is that there would be no role for the Forum if the Assembly takes the decision that the minimum wage should be a specific figure on a certain date. In that situation, you might ask, what is the point of having an independent body if we tell them what the answer is? My amendment would enable the Forum to maintain a degree of flexible work and reflect the actual economic position in the island at each review date. It is vital the Forum is able to gather evidence and analyse the economic situation at the time of each review. If approved, my amendment will set a bolder, higher target for the minimum wage, allowing for flexibility about how this is to be achieved. By agreeing this new target, the Assembly can make it a clear commitment to improving the minimum wage rates without binding the hands of the forum in its future consultations. If the Assembly agrees to the new target, it will be reflecting the position in the UK and be in line with other international low income measures. So I just want to recap on this. We were asked in P121 of 17, which was debated in 2018, to get to 45% of the average earnings by 2020. We all know, sir, what happened in 2020. A pandemic happened. We were putting millions of pounds into businesses to keep them employing people. We have deferred income and deferred GST, and we've deferred social security payments there to be paid back over the next 5 years. Money that these companies have to pay back and struggling at the same time. It's as if, sir, I met the target that was set by Senator Messick. As soon as I set it, they didn't just move the goalpost, they ran away with the ball, sir. And it's just been thrown out of the window. So I'll go on to the third part.
Sorry, Minister.
Sorry, sir, I muted. Sorry. So I'm just going to go on to the second part, which is the third part, which I'm trying to amend, and I'll explain why. So far as the third part of the Deputy's proposition is concerned, my second amendment reflects more clearly the agreement of the Assembly in April this year to ask the Forum to carry out a feasibility study in relation to the minimum wage versus the living wage. Members will recall that we have already asked me to instruct the Forum to undertake a major review on the use of 0 hours contracts next year. This will be in addition to the minimum wage review to set a rate for 2003. 0 hours work is important. The Assembly has said it is, and I know it's very important to Deputy Southern. I am not prepared to compromise the breadth of that review to squeeze in an extra piece of work looking at the living wage rates before the end of next year. There will be a new minister next year who will make the final decision, but my recommendation to them would be to start the work on the living wage rate, which is likely to be very technical, after the 0 hours work is completed. My amendment will give the Forum the flexibility to manage its workload next year and maintain the importance the Assembly attaches to both topics and the issue of 0 hour contracts, sir. The Forum, in my research, sir, all the industries want the Forum to go back and do the research. They're non-paid, they're voluntary, but they represent employers, employees, unions, and they have been doing this for a long, long time. Deputy Southern said in his opening remarks, he now wants to make the minimum wage political, but nobody answered those questions in my consultation. Did we not want the Forum involved anymore? The questions were there, sir. I emailed States members twice to get some input. Nothing happened, sir. So we are where we are. We have the Forum. Industry wants the Forum, and industry will get behind this. We are being bold. If we had set this rate, 2/3 of the medium in 2018, we would have been at £10.50 today. So I know States members want to make a better commitment to getting the minimum wage up and higher, and I'm absolutely behind that. I took this to council and every single one on council is behind me as well, sir. I maintain the amendment, sir, and I'll try and answer any questions.
The amendment seconded?
Seconded, sir.
Well, does any member wish to speak on the amendment? No member wishes to speak on the amendment? Deputy Southern.
Thank you, sir. And what I want to do is just confirm whether the Minister has come to the position whereby the median earnings will be the benchmark, and particularly that 2/3 of the median earnings will be the benchmark, and whether that strictly is by 2024. So the Minister has put in a slightly higher bid to my bid, my 732, but deferred any changes till 2024, so slowed the whole process down. I would argue that given what's happening in the market to the low paid, that we ought to be moving as quickly as we can to get comparable with what's happening in reality out there for the low paid. But significant that has she come round to the median earnings, and 2/3 of the median earnings as will be the marker looking at how we progress. And secondly, she says that we shouldn't have an absolute sum of £10 put into the process. And suggests that her way forward is better than mine. I object to the extension to 2024. I don't believe that's the right move. I would vote against that. Although I'm glad to see, as it appears to be the case, that she's come round to looking at the median wage rather than the mean wage in her text. And in particular, 2/3 obviously gives a slight boost that's not in mine. The other thing that's involved in what she calls the third part, I have added a timescale by which the minister must report to the states on the living wage process. So I want, as ever, a timed process to say, how do you react to that in terms of the living wage, moving to the living wage? What's your timescale for making a decision on that? And I think that's an important addition to what's in her amendment, but mine contained.
Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. I want to just ask a few questions regards the amendments. It's somewhat confusing, really. This is a very strange little debate in a way, because the reality of what's happening in Jersey at the moment is that the figures being mentioned of £9 and £10, which I'm pleased to see, and 2/3, which would be £11, are really already being overwritten by companies recognising that if they want to attract and keep staff at all levels, you have to pay a reasonable wage. And the living wage of around £12 or £11 something, which was quoted, I would like to see how many companies aren't paying that living wage. I know somebody who works in somebody quite well, works at a large company here. I mean, I don't think I'll be giving anything away by saying it's a cleaning company who employ 200 or 300 people, I think, and they're paying a minimum of £11.40, £11.50, I think it was, an hour, in order just to get any staff, and giving huge flexibility in the working hours. And so my question is, and I think I'd asked the same question to Deputy Southern actually in his main debate, is that the reality really is that we are missing an opportunity here as an assembly. This is a gap, a chance in our society and in our employment to say, but you know what, government's saying that we're going to have an economy that is not going to be built upon wages that simply cannot be survived on. And because companies are actually paying more, we're going to put this benchmark in right now. And I'd like to ask the Minister a genuine question, and I hope she can be a little bit more positive in her responses. Why are we waiting until 2024 when the reality of what's going on out there is way beyond this anyway? And are we not, to some extent, contemplating our navel here in terms of wage? Because I would also ask whether anybody in this assembly could live on £10 an hour. Because as we've just seen from other debates, the cost of housing and the cost of living is so extraordinarily high. And yes, we have a huge issue, but that issue needs to be driven by government. And government needs to say to our, to perhaps even impose in our economy a basic level of pay, which then creates a level playing ground for employers. You can't have people undercutting others. You can't have people saying, well, actually, we're going to pay less. The reality of that at the moment is it's not going to work anyway, because no one's working for that. So this is what I mean by the strangeness of this debate. I personally would like to have seen this at 12 or 14 or 15 pounds an hour, because the reality is you could just about probably survive on that. But even that would be a struggle. And the viability of businesses, I have to ask the question of the Minister, does she believe that if a business has to pay wages below of such a low level in order to function, is that a viable business in a modern economy? And that is a really difficult question. It's a difficult thing to face up to. But when we talk about realities, as we did in previous debates of supposed realities, I think we have to answer that question. And so I would ask the Minister whether waiting until 2024 is actually the right thing to do, and whether that will be successful in the current climate of our economy and trying to keep, attract, retain, and even train people in jobs across the spectrum. And let's be honest, we are talking about those jobs which, well, let's be frank, we've seen are way more essential than we realised during the pandemic. People working on these low wages have suddenly become heroes. But they can't be heroes on one side, but then not be paid a reasonable amount on the other side. So I'd ask the Minister, really, is 2024 too long to wait? And can we not be a little bit more positive and take an opportunity that we've got at the moment and just go for it? And then build on that further. I'm pretty sure that a good employment forum will come up with that conclusion anyway. That's about it, so thank you.
Much indeed. Constable St.
Thank you, sir. For a change, I was pleased to follow Deputy Ward. No disrespect. He makes some good points, and I think both propositions have been overtaken by the marketplace and changes since we've left the EU. But we are still required to choose between two of them, and frankly, I'm very much in favour of the Social Security Minister's proposition. For the main reason that it includes a great deal of consultation with the Employment Forum and other participants in the industry, and that for me is key. I think we need to, I'm sure members don't really need reminding, but the people that are paying these wages are businesses, and at the very least, if we want to impose a minimum, and I accept what Deputy Ward says about that being surpassed, and the same for Deputy Southern's proposition, we do need to speak to the participants in the industry and get their views and make sure that what we're proposing fits in with what they're trying to do and what where their businesses are. I think we need to remember that we spent millions of pounds supporting industries where they've suffered dreadfully in the pandemic, and those are the very industries that are employing workers that are on lower wages. The finance industry hasn't had that problem, but I can assure you in St. Wan's, the agricultural industry is facing some severe challenges at the moment. When, for example, the price of fertiliser has gone up by some 75% since the beginning of the year. So that there are some big challenges out there. But as a general principle, we should be paying people a living wage. We should be paying them enough to survive and do more than survive to be able to afford housing and food without the state having to come in and help them. So I think both propositions have their merits, but I'm inclined very much to support the Social Security Minister's proposition because it includes a high degree of consultation with all the forums involved. And I think that's the best way to arrive at a satisfactory conclusion for all concerned. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Constable. Does any other member wish to speak on the amendment? No other member wishes to speak on the amendment? Then I close the debate and call upon the Minister to respond. People are playing very fast and loose with the timing. The ruling I've given on earlier occasions, that when I say I close the debate, that's the end of the matter. But I have taken people, of course, at their word if they indicated a desire to speak prior to saying that. The Deputy of St Martin has indicated that he didn't do that, and therefore, Senator Mezek, have you already? When did you press the button?
It was a few seconds before that you'd said you were closing the debate. I don't know how quickly it takes to come up on the system.
Well,
I'll accept your ruling either way.
I beg your pardon? Yes.
I'll accept your ruling, yeah.
I'm afraid I can't encourage a situation where people leave it to the very last minute before pressing a button. I realise people do desire, for perfectly reasonable tactical reasons, to speak last in a debate, but that makes it extremely difficult to manage on occasion. Therefore, I think we have to call upon the Minister to respond.
Thank you, sir. And to Deputy Southern, I haven't come around. I wanted to make sure that I was given an alternative that would be better than we were before. We were chasing 45% of the average earnings. We arrived at that, yes, a year too late. I've taken soundings from the Assembly on different debates we've had. I listened to industry, and I've taken soundings from the Council of Ministers. So what I want to do is put the trajectory of the minimum wage to go higher and higher and get to the living wage. You might overtake the living wage. It's 2/3 of the median, absolutely. It will, I say, by the end of 24, if it can be achieved before, all well and good, absolutely. To Deputy Ward, I mean, he would like to have seen about £12 or the living wage, but neither of the propositions or the amendments got that in it. It's £9.45 today and £10 in the future in Deputy Southern's, or mine setting a trajectory out where we take businesses with us. I know you say it's all been overtaken by wages, people are paying more than this, but not all industries and not all companies are. I don't know if everybody saw the the comments by the Chamber, and the Chamber say the Minister's amendment to the proposition gives a clear direction to the Employment Forum to have regard of the objective of moving the minimum wage to 2/3 of median earnings and focusing their attention on reaching a living wage. This is from Chamber. Things are moving out there, sir. That the realization is that we want to pay people more and more, but it's got to be affordable. You can't be putting businesses out. You've got to take businesses with you. It's not today. It's a good trajectory. I just would love everybody to get behind this and vote for this amendment, which is replaces Part A and B. And I'd also like you to, there was not a lot of talk on Part C, but it is very, very important that we let the forum do their work. I think there was 8 parts on the minimum wage. One part we're doing before next year on inclusive, I can't say, but one part we're doing. And then they have to go out, and it's very technical, as I say, they're all voluntary. At the same time, they will be discussing the minimum wage. Now, if they have time and they can fit in some more work, so be it. It may well be done. I'm saying, please don't tie their hands. We already made the decision in April this year. It will be done. We will get there, but just give the forum and the companies that need to pay these wages a bit of time. We're laying down the gauntlet today. We're saying we want more people to pay more wages, and we will get there. I make the amendments, sir.
I will ask Greffy to place a vote into the link. And open the voting and ask members to vote. The vote is for whether or not the proposition should be amended by the Minister's amendment. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. Then I ask the greffier to close the voting. The amendment has been adopted, 29 votes pour, 8 votes contre, no abstentions in the link, and a further 7 votes pour in the chat.
The contre, please.
Yes, contre.
Those voting contre in the link, Deputies Ward and Alves. Deputy Southern, Senator Mezek, Deputy Tadier, the Deputy of St John, Deputy Gardner and Deputy Higgins.
Very well. We now resume debate on the proposition as amended. Does any member wish to speak on the proposition? Senator Mezek.
Thank you, sir. Thought I'd better go early there rather than risk what just happened previously. So it's to say that obviously we should vote in favour of this amended proposition. I voted against the amendment because I thought it was kicking it into the long grass and will end up taking us longer to get where we ought to be. But setting this new target is better than the status quo. So on that basis, have to support it. I wouldn't vote against it out of spite at this point, just because I didn't support the amendment. But sir, I would therefore take the opportunity to say that in accepting this and in accepting this better target from where we are now, it is still inadequate. It still doesn't get us to a living wage as quickly as we ought to. And I listened to the Social Security Minister's speech in proposing the amendment, and she did ask us to consider the businesses struggling in this economic situation. And I ask people to consider the workers who are struggling in this economic situation. Poverty pay is not inevitable. It's not something we have to tolerate as the cost of doing business. It's something that ought to be factored in right from the very start, that if you're employing people, you pay them enough to live on. That's not a radical principle. It's not an unreasonable principle. Many businesses don't get other things provided to them, subsidised by taxpayers so they can have it below market rate, but they do get their workers subsidised through the benefit system, and that's wrong. So I look forward to the day where we can say that Jersey's statutory minimum wage is a genuine living wage, that we have abolished poverty pay in our society, and I think there'll be significant economic benefits from that, as well as the social benefit of simply giving people dignity and work by paying them properly. So I support this amended proposition, vote for it, but it is inadequate. And I say now that, you know, this is making a political point here, but next time round we will do better than this, and we'll certainly be pushing for that.
Very much, Senator. Deputy of St Martin.
Thank you, sir. Can I start immediately by apologising for my late request to speak in the amendment debate? I was expecting more people to speak. But anyway, there's no excuse, and I was late. Sir, I want to speak now. It will probably be the same speech I would have made at the amendment debate, but I'm going to support this amendment. It does some things which I want to do. The last 18 months or so, I've been backwards and forwards on minimum wage and living wage debates, and I find it very difficult. So on one hand, I want to increase the minimum wage, and I want to get us to a position where we pay the living wage. But at the same time, sir, I recognise that our farming industry, particularly our farming industry, struggles with minimum wage increases, and they have made the case, a good case, so increasingly good case, that they, like unlike other industries, do not have the ability to just increase the price they receive for their goods. And they really, really struggle with minimum wage and living wage increases. And we know that's because multiples, large supermarkets and other outlets pretty much dictate the price their product is sold for. So on one hand, I want everybody to be paid better. On the other hand, I really want to make sure that our agriculture in Jersey stays competitive and our countryside stays beautiful, because it is the farmers and landowners that keep our countryside looking so good. So I'm going to support this amendment today. As I say, it does a target of 24 is a little way off, but at least it's going to address the issue. And it's also going to address the issue of taking the minimum wage up to the living wage standards and seek to consult as to where that might be. So, as I say, we're heading in the right direction, but government really needs to come out with a plan to help farming through this increased wage crisis, because they cannot, as has already been mentioned, sustain very much more of this. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. And actually, I want to speak in a similar vein to Deputy Luce. I fully support and have done throughout my time in the Assembly the move towards a living wage, but it needs to be, there is no question, a structured move, because quite simply, one industry is suffering as a result of many different pressures, and that is the agriculture sector, sir. And as Deputy Luce quite rightly said, the agriculture sector isn't just about doing business and making money. It's about the actual shape and of this island, the way it looks, the island that we all 100 and so many thousands of us are able to enjoy. And so to lose the agriculture sector, sir, would be more than just to lose a business. It would be to lose the way we maintain this island. And I absolutely refuse to put that that industry at risk. The industry, though, is at risk. There is no question, sir. Costs associated with Brexit mean that employing workers from outside the island, just the cost of bringing them to the island in terms of permits, in terms of all the bureaucracy, the extra flights, except the extra distance for the flights, yeah, extra cost, means £1,700 per worker, sir. On every single worker that has to be brought to the island is costing an extra £1,700. Or actually, just in case I'm misleading, is costing £1,700, but I believe it's extra. That's a staggering amount. The rise to £9.22, I believe, is putting approximately £1 million on the wage bill of the sector for those, particularly for as a result of those migrant workers. That's £1 million in a sector which made across the sector a multi-million-pound loss last year, sir. And that's the second year in a row, I believe, where there were losses. That's not feasible. It can't be sustained. As a result of that, I am, as Deputy Luce has requested, I am working at the moment within the department to create a package of support to help with some of those costs. And I'm also working with Deputy Martin to try and find changes to the way Social Security is dealt with, or with regard to those workers, in order to alleviate those costs. But that needs to be done first before we can subject that particular industry to a living wage. It's incredibly sad, but that's the way it is. A living wage at this moment would destroy the industry. And that's why I voted for Deputy Martin's amendment, because it is about doing this in a structured manner. We are working, and I will continue to work as the person with responsibility for the rural economy to get that support to the farmers quickly. But we can't afford to lose farmers in Jersey. And I don't believe there has really been as much pressure on the industry right now as there is. That's one industry, and I appreciate that the argument can be made that, oh, well, that's one industry that's holding back all the rest of the industries. Well, what I would say, sir, in that respect is, number one, the Minister of Social Security has given a clear roadmap with her amendment as to how she's going to get us to the living wage. I'm working with her and others to make sure we support that agricultural sector. But also what we are seeing, sir, quite clearly is wage inflation in most sectors across the island. And that wage inflation is happening regardless of what the government does on with respect to the minimum wage, and in itself is pushing more and more workers' wages up above the living wage level. And that wage inflation is likely to carry on beyond the year ahead. And so, to be honest, I think it's, and I really must do the analysis, but I think it's highly likely that well before 2024, pretty much most workers in Jersey will be being paid the living wage, irrespective of what legislation we have in place. But the agriculture sector, particularly the growing element of the agriculture sector, won't be able to match that pace unless we're able to support it. And that's what we're doing, sir. So I thank members for agreeing to the Minister's amendment, because it was the right thing to do to meet this living wage, which we all, and it's not just me, I know I was really pleased that when I first joined the department, very senior officers in the economy department were quite clear Jersey's going to the living wage. That's where we're going. I think we're all set on this course, and we've now accelerated it, perhaps not as much as Deputy Southern would have liked, but unfortunately his proposals would have caused enormous damage to the agriculture sector, and that's not something, sir, that I can agree to. Thank you, sir.
Much. I have at least two other members listed to speak, as well, of course, as the rapporteur to respond. Rather than call on the next speaker, I've just
quite happy to keep it short.
Sorry. Well, in which case, if you're not going to speak for long, Deputy Ward.
Yeah, just very quickly, sir. I would say I agree with the issue regards the agriculture sector. When I met with the Farmers Union, there was obviously an issue there. But I'm afraid what we've done here is we're passing the buck a little, and I just want to get this clear about the political nature of the minimum wage. It is a political thing, because government set up the framework within which the forum make the decisions on the minimum wage. And if we have the structure set up where industries that are struggling are supported appropriately and sensibly and intelligently and thoughtfully, then the minimum wage can come through and be driven through by the forum. At the moment, we don't have that. So we seem to have a catch-22 situation regards those decisions. And yet again, we're passing it on to 2024. Two things I'll finish with, sir. First is I apologise to all those people who will have to wait to 2024 to have a decent wage, and this Assembly can't push it through quickly. I really would like to pass on my apologies. As an elected member, I would not support that. And second, I'm not a betting man, sir, but I wonder what will come first: a decent living wage, or all of the properties at Southfield, the majority that can't be sold, will go to buy-to-let investors, and then they will be paying high rents on them. And so that is a priority by this Alliance Party government. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Deputy. Is the adjournment proposed?
Sir, my speech is about 2 minutes. 1 minute.
Well, we can go right up to the margin for 12:45 if you want. Conataba St Martin.
Thank you, sir. I echo Deputy Luce and Deputy Morell's sentiments re agriculture. The farming industry is at risk, which means that the look of our island, history and identity of our island is very much at risk, and our countryside, therefore, is at risk. I will be supporting the amended proposition and urgently ask that this government looks at ways to help the agricultural industry now. Thank you, sir.
Much indeed. Well, now would be the time that would come that I would ask for the adjournment as to whether states wish to continue.
Adjourn, please, sir.
Can we propose
Well,
adjourn, sir?
Well,
Can I
first
also
in the
propose
list.
that it's shortened, please, sir? Lunchtime is shortened to 1 hour, if possible.
Well, the short answer is you are able to propose that, Deputy. We will have, but it clearly doesn't move without. Clearly, there is some resistance to it.
Okay, I'll withdraw that, sir.
Very well. The adjournment is proposed.
Yes, sir.
The adjournment is proposed. The Assembly stands adjourned until 2:15.